Country. Okay, welcome everybody. Today we have a great guest. We have Mike Ranta and his dog Spitzy, who you might hear in the background. Mike is a modern day voyageur. He holds the record for the longest canoe expedition in one season. He's done a lot to raise money for veterans, first responders, and youth organizations. Just in general, is a great guy. Mike, welcome.
Hey, right on. Thanks for having me, Jim. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So you started telling me a bit of a story. You're paddling solo, or you and Spitzy, are along the North Shore of Lake Superior. And you're looking for a place to camp, or it's getting late in the day, and you see a big bear on shore. And all of a sudden, the wind blows up, and you are kind of forced with nowhere else to camp.
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy day. Eventually, we took off around, or it must have been around 4:30.
Yeah.
It was just getting light. Took off. We got in about 5 hours of paddling. There it was around 9:30. And I look over, and there's this big old black bear come poked his nose out. And it was along the east shore of Black Bay on Lake Superior. Mm-hmm. And how the shoreline worked, about maybe 200 feet off the shoreline, there was a huge cliff escarpment that went for several kilometers. So we see this bear, and you got about a 200-yard buffer in between that and the cliff. And so we were laughing at the bear and making fun of him, and took off down the way. And then we got about maybe 2 kilometers. And I know the bear was heading the same way we were, just by the way he was walking and moving along before we'd seen him. And he got a hold of, or how did he put that now? He started walking toward us. We got put in about 2 kilometers down. Got in. I phoned my dad up. Mm-hmm. First thing I did, I said, "Dad, I screwed up." Dad always taught me about bush justice. Be careful what you do in there, especially when it comes to animals. So I told my dad about what we ran into this bear, and we were going to probably be crossing paths because he had no choice but to go by me. Mm-hmm. So I brought the canoe up out of the water. The waves come in. It was pretty rough. There's no way I could get out in that water. If you know Lake Superior, when the swells come in out of the southwest, they're massive. It would have been suicidal to go in those waters. So anyway, we waited. It was about an hour and a half when Spitz lit up. And he started barking with nose in the air. So I knew my dog very well by that time. He was telling me there's something in the area. So I look over to the south of us, or the north of us, where the bear was heading south. Mm-hmm. And I seen the bear standing up. Mm-hmm. He was a good-sized bear. He was around 250, somewhere in there. So right away I was always taught, Dad's, make yourself big, get after him. So Spitz and I tore off after the bear. Mm-hmm. And the bear took off.
Most people run the other way.
Yeah, most people would, but I mean, once I knew it, and the bear was kind of shocked too, and that's what we wanted him to be. And he took off. He was a big male. He took off, and then I thought, okay, maybe he'll leave. So it was about maybe an hour and a half later, Spitz lit up again. But I looked over, and he was right directly to the east of us, so he's starting to circle around us. So we actually went a little bit south, or a little bit north, and then we tried to push him which way he was going. And again, we took off after him, and again, he took off running, and he went past. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, perfect. Mm-hmm. He's going to be heading his way, I'm my way. The wind was still picked up. There was no way I could get out. And by this time, it was getting a little bit late in the day of it. Mm-hmm. So we were waiting. Mm-hmm. And then Spitz lit up again, and it came at us from the south end of it. And I'm thought, wow, this is 3 times now. So either this bear's hungry, and he's looking for something, can smell my food. They say they got the best nose in the business. Mm-hmm. And the bear came looking at us again. He stood up, which is a good sign. When you see a bear stand up, that's showing their curiosity. They're trying to get a better look at things. And he was grabbed a hold of a little maple, and he was looking at it. So Spitz and I said, this time I'm really going to put the run on him. Mm-hmm. So I ran for about, chasing him for about, let's say, it's a good 300 yards, close to half a kilometer down. Every time he'd stop, look back, we screamed and kept after him. But I also know you don't want to run too far away from your gear and stuff like that, because there might have been another bear around. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So we went back, and I thought, okay, that's it. He's definitely not going to be coming back and around. But Spitz's nose was always up, and he was barking, so I had a feeling he was hanging around. Mm-hmm. So then it got close to getting dark, and I thought, the wind's still too far up. There's no way I can get out. There's a good chance I'm going to have to spend the night here. And I'm thinking, okay, and the wind was pretty persistent. It ended up, you're sleeping with one eye open, and you can hear a church mouse pissing on a cotton ball at this time, right? Your senses are alert. So I'm sitting there. Spitz is, he's got his nose in the air, and he's constantly up and down all night, and we didn't get much sleep. And then finally the light broke and then the wind stopped. And I thought, okay, here's our chance. So I got up and unzipped the tent to let Spitz out, and not 10 feet away from the tent, there was a great big pile of bear dung. So right away I thought, this bear's got a sense of humor. Right. Because he come in, crapped right in front of my tent, and then left. You know what I mean? Just to say, like, would do. Spitz come out looking around like, what the hell? But I mean, that bear was smart enough and quiet enough at that size to come in, do that, and leave, and we did not know he was there. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of unsettling a little bit, but at the same time, I just thought, this bear's got a sense of humor. Because that's what I would have done.
No kidding.
So yeah, that was it was a unique experience, but it was at the same time, we're in their backyard.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of the sense I got of all that was like him saying, hey, I could have had you if I wanted you.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, that reminds me. We used to have a dog that whenever he was in trouble, he'd get like banished to the basement or put outside or whatever, and he'd like poo there because just to get us back. Because he knew that we had to go clean it up. He's like, oh, tell me what to do. I'm just gonna crap right here on the floor. How do you like that?
It's like my dog.
Right.
Oh, I had some funny run-ins with that pup with my other dog. God bless him. I had him for 14 years, 8 months and 4 days, and we paddled close to 40,000 kilometers together, and it was just we had just this cool relationship. It was heartbreaking when he left, but
well, he's the exact same dog,
the same breed I got here today. I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes down to the finished Spitz, but we just had some really fun moments, that's for sure.
I bet, man. I had a dog like that too, and that I took on a whole bunch of adventures. And it's amazing the connection you get. When I was up in the Arctic with them, sleeping in the tent. It felt like we were the only people in the world, or the only beings in the world a few times, just in such a remote area.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. And they're the best companions, man.
Yeah, it's you're never alone. He was like a translator for me. After a while, I got to know his bark so well. I knew whether he's barking at a squirrel, a bear, a rabbit. Whether he didn't know what it was. Lots of times when I'd pull in, I'd pull up, put the canoe in, he would jump out. Mm-hmm. He'd run in the bush, do his little circle thing, and then come back and let me know, kind of give me the thumbs up. Yeah. And there was a few times where he jumped out. There was one on the North Saskatchewan River. I don't know what it was in the bush. I don't know what it was. We pulled up. It was a little kind of a clay little jut coming out of the river. It looked like a nice, beautiful little camping spot. Spitz jumped out of the canoe, ran in the bush, and just about as quick as he went in there, he come right back out again, tail down, jumped in the canoe, and just looked at me. And I knew this is not the place to say. And then I heard something in the bush. I don't know what it was, but I peeled the hell out of there. Right? Yeah. But he was really concerned with it. Yeah. So and you could see it.
Tell by his body language.
By his body language. He didn't bark much. He just looked at me, and he was just like, had this concern, like, no, this is not a good spot. Mm-hmm. And like when he jumped back in the canoe, I just sensed that, and I thought, okay. So just when I was pulling away, it was just, I heard something in the bush, and it was a big something. I don't know, it could have been a moose or deer or whatever it was, but it startled him to the point where it made me leery, so we went down a few more kilometers. And
good. That's a good dog, man.
It was. He's done that several times, and I've watched that dog tree. I wouldn't be scared to say he's treed over 50 bears in his time.
Wow.
He just goes after them, and it's so impressive to watch that animal when he's working, because he knows his role. His role is, hey, you keep the bears away. I'm going to keep the dogs away. Mm-hmm. And that's the coyotes and the wolves. And we've had incidences with coyotes, not so much wolves. We had a couple with wolves where they were kind of looking around, but I got them on leash and everything. And you know what they do? They'll try to con your dog away from you.
Right.
Spitz was amazing that way. He had a couple instances when he was really young, so he was really leery of other dogs. Mm-hmm. So we had one incident on the North Saskatchewan River. Mm-hmm. It was right by Maidstone, and I pulled into camp for the night. It was about 9:30, just getting dusk. I just set my tent up. I had one of those quick set-up tents, and going on the bank, and all of a sudden I heard a thump. And I look over, and there's another canoeer going by, a solo canoeer. And I thought, wow, I never seen anybody like that. I didn't say nothing. He just went by, and it was getting dark, and I could tell he was looking for a place. So the next morning I got up bright and early, got everything all dialed in, just about to push off from the shore, and I looked, and there's buzzards circling. And I thought, it's got to be something on the side of the river. Got to be. And it was really close to the side of the river, so I paddled over as quick as I could, got my GoPro ready, and I stood up, and just when I looked up over the bank, there was a dead body there.
This is Jim Baird Adventurer's Windbound Campfire Pilsner. It's made with just a little bit of smoked malted barley. It's not very strong. You can kind of tell afterwards that it's got a little smoky flavor, and it's a very crisp, drinkable Pilsner. I called it Windbound because as somebody who paddles on sometimes large bodies of water, and for all of you that boat, you know, sometimes when the winds are too intense, you got to post up on shore and wait out the wind. And I thought that would be a good time to have yourself a beer. It's available to Ontario residents online. You can check out the link in my description here, or you can pick some up at Muskoka Brewery's Tap House in Bracebridge, Ontario. And hopefully as time goes by, it will be more widely available. I also wanted to just share what Mike Ranta and I are drinking in this episode. This is Muskoka Brewery's Tread Lightly, and this is gotta be my favorite light beer of all time. Just delicious and really good price. So that is available in a lot more places. LCBO beer store in Ontario, grocery stores and whatnot. Super excited to announce my beer, Jim Baird Adventurer's Windbound Campfire Pilsner. Check it out and order some through the link in my description. Oh my God.
Yeah, that was it really took me aback because I really wasn't expecting that. There was a human foot sticking up out of the sand, and I could see the skull and the bird really literally right on the side, and I was just, did I just bear witness to this? So I didn't record anything, of course. Right. It kind of took me by shock, and I'm standing up in the canoe, and I'm just like, Spitz is barking at the birds. So I sat down, and it was a spring cut bank. It's just, you weren't going to get off there. So I tried to pull over because I wanted to see. I wouldn't, if it was a mannequin, you know, it's just, I couldn't believe what I seen.
Right.
So after about 2-3 clicks down the river, I realized I'm not going to be able to pull out and go down that way. You know, it was kind of odd. So anyway, we went farther down, and I seen a flash of that paddle. So as far as you could see down that river, it had to have been 2-3 clicks. I seen that canoer. So I picked up the paddle, and I was just giving her. And finally, I got close enough where I hollered, and he turned around, and he said, "Hey, you know," he waited for me. I paddled up, and I said, "How you doing today?" And he says, "Good. Did you see that dead body back there?" And I was like, "You seen it too?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, I was going to go camping, and I was shining my light, and I looked over, and he said, there's a dead guy looking at me."
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay, you seen it, I seen it." I had my alarm. We couldn't get out with our cell phones, so I texted and said, "Listen, we need somebody to get a hold of the police, meet us at the Peyton Ferry Landing," because you know what was coming up ahead. And police met us down there and everything, and yeah, they ended up finding the guy. And it turned out that he was a young fella that was involved with gangs out of Edmonton. And yeah, it was a sad situation, but at the same time, I'm glad that they did find him, and the family got a little bit of closure out of what was going on.
So he was missing then, I guess, for
a year and a half.
Oh wow! So was he actually traveling the river, or
No,
did he get like?
I think he was put down, and then they threw him in the river, and that was one of the That's one of the common places, from what I was understand, that the police say that sometimes they get pushed up on the bank there.
Right. So basically he got murdered and stashed in the river, and you took him out there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's got to be a scary
thing.
It
was but the 2 days prior to that, we were camped on the river, and it was about 2:00 in the morning, and we had a pack of coyotes come on us, and that was probably one of the most. It didn't terrify me; it just made me feel incredibly uneasy when you hear several coyotes literally right around your tent, and they're doing that kayaking, and the hair on the back of your neck just...
And of course, they always sound way closer.
Oh,
than they
were
too,
like,
right?
I mean, I could literally hear them ruffling around the tent, and I think they were trying to get Spitzy out. And Spitzy was literally ears down, and he was pissing a little bit in the tent. He was that scared, and I was kind of he sensed my fear. I think is what happened there, because I had it, and I thought, I got to shake this off. And, you know, I grabbed my frying pan and my flashlight and went out and started banging and hollering and screaming, and then you can hear them take off. But I think they were capitalizing. They sensed my fear and his.
Right.
So fear is a bad thing to have in the bush, because animals can sense what we're feeling on it. And I think that might have accelerated their predatory instincts, so to speak. But So yeah, we were on edge for all that, and then like I said, it's surprising what a person runs into in life. That's for sure. It really it was one of those moments you just kind of go, wow, you know.
Yeah. Did that stick with you a bit? Like, did it take a while to shake?
It did for sure. You know, when you bear witness to something like that, you kind of feel compassion for the family and for the people that are other involved. But you know.
I actually didn't have an experience like that, but part of the reason why I just went full rip into like bush life and outdoors all the time had to do with a friend who actually, you know, he was a friend of my younger cousin, but we hung out with him a lot and spent time at my family's camp and stuff like that. And then we lost contact with him. He started getting into some, you know, bad stuff, drugs and stuff like that. And he ended up getting killed, getting stabbed to death. Yeah. It was incredibly shocking and sad. And that sort of, you know, I was younger at the time, and that kind of gave me a push. Like, you know, I was living in Toronto at the time, and I was just like, you know, I don't want to be around this kind of, you know, like, this isn't cool. Like, not that I was ever into that sort of lifestyle, but definitely gave me a push to just like get out into the bush and get back with the things that really matter. You know,
I think that's why we're having such a big issue with it nowadays, especially with the mental issues. We're not getting our kids involved with nature enough. There's an honest silence in the bush. You know, where you put yourself in there. You know, and you know what we do. When you're out there by yourself and you're doing what you do, you have to be incredibly honest with yourself and with the elements around you. If not, they'll eat you up. You know, and it's okay to be scared. It's okay to adapt to your fear of things. You know, you should challenge yourself a little bit. And I believe in scaring the life out of myself at least once a month. You know, to make me really feel like I'm living, right?
Dick Prenicky said, little fear is good for a man, and that goes for everybody.
It does, you know, and it creates a respect. And then once you have that, once you learn it in there, then you realize that the bush is... It's a very friendly place too. There's a yin to the yang.
Yes, and you know, there absolutely is. I know where you're coming from there, but and you know, as we're talking, we're telling these stories. You know, you're somebody that has traveled in insane distances. You know, arguably as many as anybody alive today. By canoe, and these are just the little bits of things that have happened to you over an enormous amount of time. And you know, at the end of the day, you were totally fine, and this huge bear, you're forced to camp where the bear is, and it literally played a joke on you. Yeah, you know, and so I think that's kind of the fear with people that haven't had a lot of bush time. Yeah, once you spend a lot of time in the bush, you're like, well, I haven't been eating yet, so it probably ain't going to happen tomorrow or the next day, right?
Yeah, and you have these days or days on end where literally nothing happens. You know, you go and you got these beautiful sunny days and you're out paddling and you're just enjoying everything, and that's what just makes it all worthwhile of things.
But people hear the action-packed bear story.
Yeah, then you know, and then there's sometimes you get put into situations that you got really zero control over. Another time for me was on Tobin Lake. And I got out into the main part of the lake, and all of a sudden this storm came in from the north, and you can hear it rumbling, and then the winds picked up. And I realized I'm not in a good spot here. The shoreline's horrible. It was all flooded. So, I mean, I'm going around, and finally I had to get off the water. It was just in this tag alder swamp. I pull in, mosquitoes like you never seen. I'm just pulling in. I'm thinking, where am I going to make a camp? So I figured there's this little knob down there. So I figured I'm going to go in there, start sawing away, underground hornet's nest. I mean, there's these yellow jackets. I get stung in the face. I swell up like a balloon. So I'm losing it. Like Spitz is just sitting in the canoe going, what the hell's Dad doing? So I'm losing my mind. I'm just screaming like, get out, I want to get this thing. But I look over, there's a bear staring at me, not 50 feet away looking at me with this confused look in his face. And then I lost it. I was like, you get out of here. Killed all the bugs. Just stomped down. I'm all sitting there swollen, and Spitz is looking at me like, "You got this? Are you okay now?" Yeah. I'm hungry. You know? And we were there for 2 days in that swamp, right? It was just like little to no sleep, you know. But I mean, it's just. But then again, it cleared up. We had one of the most beautiful paddles after that, you know. So and I find that when you're put into those situations, it's frustrating at the time, but I also know now that there's something ahead. It's something to do with Mother Nature. I'm going to punish you a little bit, but there's a reward at the end of it.
There's like, I've been in that position where I swear Mother Nature was playing a game of hardships and rewards with me. You know, like you're rewarded with this amazing thing after something so challenging happens.
Yeah.
Have you had a similar experience as that, where it almost feels like a game?
Yeah, and yeah, especially when David Jackson and I were paddling on in 2017 across Lake Winnipeg, and you know that lake, it's just it's 39 feet deep on the best of days. When the winds pick up, it gets so choppy so fast. And David and I were literally paddle for 6 hours, down for 2 days.
Wow.
Paddle for 3-4 hours, down for 5-6 days. And it was just like that the whole way through. Yeah. And I'm getting frustrated because, you know, I like to move. I like to get around things, eh? And David was awesome. He's an amazing endurance paddler. And, you know, we worked our way into it. And then we get to this little place there at Dauphin River, and it was so worth it. You know, I met this father with this young girl. And I was carving these little canoes at the time.
Oh, yeah.
So I was putting them all together. So I seen this little girl there, and I said, "Here you are." And I gave her the little canoe, and she was just, and she whispered to her dad. She was kind of shy. And he said, "We'll be right back." Mm-hmm. So it was cool. You know, about a half hour later, she come back, and she gave me a beaded bracelet.
Oh, okay.
And I looked at him, and I said, "Does it felt like we've done this before?" And he just smiled, and he goes, "Yeah." And it was so cool to see a father teaching her young daughter, like, you know, and it was her that said, "Hey, I want to go back and get a bracelet for him."
Right.
So there was that, you know, I just felt like I was way back in the day of things at that time.
Where were you at this point?
That was on Lake Winnipeg on Dauphin River.
Okay. Yeah. So I've, you know, a lot of people, they think Lake Winnipeg, they think the city of Winnipeg.
Yeah.
But Lake Winnipeg is one of the largest lakes in the world.
It is.
And its northern reaches are anything but populated.
That is for sure. And if you really want to get an experience for bugs in Canada, it's northern Manitoba.
Oh my God! My brother and I got hammered. We went from Leaf Rapids to up to the South Seal. So we went up. So Leaf Rapids up the Barrington River.
Oh wow!
And then over the Haida Land into the South Seal River. And then the Seal River to the Seal to Hudson Bay. And then we got a boat pickup from there. Yeah. And like my brother's like, I can't do, let's bump the trip up, like, you know, sooner. And so now we're in June, and the bugs were just starting to come out at the beginning. This was like a 25-day trip. And good Lord, did we ever get hammered.
Yeah. The black flies, then you got the mosquitoes, you've got the bulldogs there, the horse flies, and you got the deer flies. They call them bulldogs up north, and I see why. Yeah. Man, when I was paddling with Stephen O'Neill, Right Honorable Stephen O'Neill, when we were paddling from Fort McMurray to Yellowknife, he ended up getting out of Fort Resolution. But right down the Athabasca River, that's all you heard was bzz, 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 bzz. You know, they were so thick. When you were switching your paddle hands, you were catching them between your fingers.
Wow.
And it was just
good luck, you know, doing your business in the morning without getting a few black.
Well, absolutely. You know, and then as soon as that sun would go down, they would kind of disappear, and that's when the mosquitoes would take over, and they'd come in, and it was
they just swap out.
It was it was
the
incredible.
Next shift comes in, like they punch their card, and the next one comes.
I could see how that would be a deterrent for people going up there. Like, but I mean, at the same time, it's once you get used to it's wearing the right clothing too is a big thing. You know, getting stuff that they can't get to drill through and always moving.
You get immune, too, to the mosquito bites.
Yeah.
You know, like I've noticed that it doesn't mean that they're not bothering you and they're not all around your face, right? But you stop swelling up, you stop getting itchy.
Yeah. Eventually your body will develop an immunity to it.
Yes. And I know, you know, being immune to the bugs around here that we have in Ontario, I actually went out west and did a trip in the Rockies, and I was swelling up just because there's a slight difference in, I guess, you know, because the mosquitoes, they shoot a little anticoagulant into you, so that your blood doesn't, you know, harden up when they're drinking it, the bastards. You know, and you're right. And so I wasn't immune to that. Whatever their little, you know, freaking, you know, their special sauce was, I wasn't immune to that. And I'm what the hell's going on? It reminded me of being a kid when I used to swell up.
Get that itch that you can't get away from. And
And my uncle, we're probably not doing the best job of encouraging people to get into the outdoors at this point. But these things are, these occurrences, like, really, is there an enormous danger from bears? And the answer is no.
No.
You know what I mean? I remember my uncle telling me, if you want to deal with bugs, you gotta make a deal with them. You gotta make a trade with the bugs. I said, what? He said, look, go into mosquito feeding hour, the witching hour, right at dawn, in your undies, and just lie there and let hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mosquitoes bite you, and just like, don't, you never use the word, but I realize now it's like, just meditate. You just let them bite you. And I went and I did it, and I never was bothered by bugs.
Really? Well, I find too, not showering and not cleaning. That helps the bugs stay the hell away from you too a bit. But I had another experience really bad on the Winnipeg River with no-see-ums. And those things, I don't know what it is with those, but I get an itch reaction to them.
Yeah.
I was sweating. I think it was the MacArthur Dam, so I decided I'm going to go take a dip. So I stripped down, jumped in the water, and I said, I'm going to stay here for the night. And I was kind of just in my undies, and I'm standing there, and I'm looking around, and it almost looked like a smoke. And I was like, what is that? It was those damn no-see-ums. And they got on me. And I mean, I'll never forget this, laying in the tent, and I was itching right from the tip of my toes to the top of my head. I could not scratch myself. I was rolling. I got such an itch reaction to that. No. For about 2 hours, I was just red because I was...
And then you can't tell whether they're done. Like, usually with a mosquito, you can be like, okay, it's biting me now. But with the no-see-ums, you don't know whether they're biting you, whether they're done biting you. You look, you can't see the bastards. Like,
and I guess they spit something on you, and that's what gives that burn and that itch. I don't know.
Hurt.
I think I always thought they're nothing but a little wee set of wings with some teeth on it.
Bring you to your knees, these little tiny things,
And you can't, like, I mean, you got to light a pick or something because they'll go right through a screen like it's a door. Like, just come in like smoke.
Right, like nothing. Like they're just a ghost. Just walk right through the wall. Brutal, man.
Oh, I still to this day love the smell of a pick. It's just one of those things.
Well, my brother and I, we used to sleep in a tree fort, one time for a month straight, even. And that's what we used to burn in there because, of course, it'd be full of bugs, right? And so, it's just like a nostalgic, scent. I don't know how great it is to breathe it all in, but I'm still here.
Well, that's just it. I don't know. If we could somehow make it into some kind of aromatic thing, I would have that burning in the house all the time, right?
Oh, they're good, man. Yeah, awesome, man. So some of these trips, when you're talking about Lake Winnipeg and you're talking about, some of the different areas, these are little bits and pieces from your cross Canada adventure. So which you've done more than once as well. Well,
I did Rocky Mountain House to Montreal in 2011. 2014 was Vancouver to Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia. That was 214 days. Then I accomplished it in 2016. I made it in 200 days exactly to Vancouver, right to Cape Breton Islands.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you did your first trip. For Rocky Mountain. So that's in Alberta at the foot of the Rocky Mountains. I remember my first time going there. I'm like, I thought I'd be in the mountains. It's called Rocky Mountain, but it's at the foot.
Right at the
Rocky,
foot of it.
Right? Yeah. Which is actually a bigger town than I expected it to be. I thought.
It's a beautiful little community. Really we had a lot of fun there.
Yeah, really cool. So you start from there. So essentially just east of the Rocky Mountains.
Yes.
And the Rocky Mountains are further east in Canada than they are in the States as well. And you traveled across the entire country by canoe and, portaging from body water, all the way to Montreal.
Yeah.
And when you were in Montreal, is that when you were inspired on your next trip to keep going?
I did that in 130 days. And I'll never forget when I got to Montreal and I'm thinking, I had so much jam left. And I'm just thinking, I'm getting into Montreal earlier and I'm looking down that river and I'm thinking, I can still keep going. I got no problem with it. I got good energy. It felt good. Like I was 130 days in, and I think I lost 50 some pounds at that time, and I felt fantastic. And my dad was there and some friends, and it just felt great. And then you get that post trip depression, I guess.
Right.
When you're done.
What do you do next?
Yeah, exactly. And I did. I fell almost into a depression. I accomplished something that I wanted to, but at the same time, it was like, what next now?
Yeah, like Edmund Hillary,
and then,
right? That's what happened to him when he climbed Everest. He
Yeah.
was like horrible. He's like, what the hell do I do now?
Yeah.
Right?
You feel like you almost hit a pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
And then I started looking into it. Nobody's crossed the continent. And I'm thinking,
In one season.
and I'm thinking, I can do this. And I started looking at it and thinking, how long is it going to take me to get to Rocky Mountain House? What time of the year do I got to leave? And what's feasible? And, where am I going to be about? And I thought, well, no better time to leave than April Fool's Day, which is next to impossible to get a radio interview, by the way, in Vancouver when you're saying you're paddling across the country in April Fool's, right? Yeah. They just simply don't want to put you on the radio.
They don't believe you.
They don't believe me. The second, I got all kinds of...
Yeah.
But it was, and I'll never forget making that first trek across and that first paddle up the river and looking at the Fraser and thinking, wow, can I get up this thing, And there were some very challenging moments in there, of course, but, you sit back and you think, and there was an old guy back in Atikokan, Joe Meany, and he was the one that he really taught me, Mike, he said, sometimes you just got to sit down and think about what you're doing and be patient. He said, the river's always going to be there. He said, but you won't be if you make the wrong decision, so... he taught me to always bring that little bottle of medicinal stuff there with you.
Right.
Have a beer and sit back and think about it.
Something to pass the time a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was probably one of the best advice that I ever had for canoeing, is be patient. The same thing my father told me. You can't be in a rush out there when you're by yourself. You just can't. There's nobody there to help you. So you got to make sure that you come home. This is in the days when I used to go into Quetico Park for, a month or two at a time.
Right.
And we didn't have no track locators, nothing. Every once in a while you stopped in at a ranger station and paid your due, and then you got them to phone home and say, yeah, Dad, I'm still alive.
Right, right. How old were you back when you were doing that?
Oh, wow. I was soloing in a canoe when I was 9.
Wow.
When I was young, I used to go to Straw Hat Lake just behind there, and Dad would go, I'll go spend the night out there.
So you're from the canoeing capital of the world.
Absolutely. Canoeing capital of Canada. Yeah.
The canoeing which is
pretty much the world. Yeah.
Atikokan.
Yeah. And it was such a great place to grow up, for bushwise and that, and for people, we just got a really cool community there. Yeah. And the canoeing part is just, you've got Quetico Park right at the back door. We got the White Otter Provincial Park north of us. We've got a lot of great outfitters up there. We got Canoe Canada. I got my buddy Brad McNally. He's a guide up there now, and just an amazing bushman. Like this guy really knows the bush. He knows where the fish are. That's one thing I got to say. Oh, Mr. McNally,
sounds like a good friend to have.
He is. Yeah, Brad and I have known each other ever since I can remember. I think grade 2 we met, and we were in boxing together for years, and. He's got a hell of a right hand. I know I've tasted that a couple times, And he's just a really good guy. He's extremely knowledgeable about the bush, and he's a guy that really takes pride in making sure that you're going to go in there and he's going to take you and you're going to have a good time.
Right. Awesome. And so Atikokan is in northwestern Ontario.
Yeah, it's about
north of Thunder Bay.
Yeah, about 200 kilometers west of Thunder Bay, northwest of Thunder Bay.
Northwest of Thunder Bay. So, you literally have water. You have Lake Superior's not terribly far.
Yeah.
You literally have water, interconnected waterways at your doorstep.
Yes.
There, to say the least.
Yeah, we could literally leave from my hometown there and go anywhere in Canada by water
amazing.
On that. Yeah.
And that's one of the really cool things about the trips that you do too, is that a lot of these routes, they haven't changed to, there's been dams and stuff like that in some areas, but you're literally traveling the same route that like the voyageurs during the fur trade traveled. And that, before that, First Nations on their trading, hunting parties, migrations and everything traveled those same waterways and those same routes.
Yeah, they were the highways. I mean, it must have been so cool back in the day to look out and just see literally hundreds of canoes traveling like we see on the 401 here now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day where there was no motors, very little gunpowder and stuff like that, there was just, everything was by foot and by paddle.
Totally. Yeah. Was that one of the things that speaks to you about doing these routes, or just about getting out into the bush is some of those old routes?
Absolutely. There's times when you can almost hear the voyageurs singing in the rocks, when you go down through the Laverandy Park. Or another big one I love going through is the French River system. Oh, I mean, it's just so beautiful. The geology around there. Crazy. Like you look at some of the trips these guys did in big canoes, birch bark canoes. Like, I mean, you got to understand that they didn't have any stains and stuff like that to keep the water from soaking into this wood. Like, I mean, those canoes must have been just brutally heavy.
Yeah. And not to mention, they probably, for the most part, didn't have waterproof footwear either.
No,
like I know
it would have been woolen leather.
They would have like sealskin boots that would be waterproof, but
that would have been a very rare thing to have, and I don't think they would have been waterproof very long. It would have been eventually they would have wore through, but
for a season they had them maybe.
You look at doing the research. I read a lot of books, even on the Franklin expeditions and stuff like that. They did 3 overland expeditions before they got lost in the Arctic, and you hear the stories these guys go through. There's the one with George back when they went all the way up down. They went through the Hood River. 22 of them left. 11 came back.
Why is it named the Hood River?
After George Hood, I believe.
Because he got.
Was it George Hood or?
I forget his first name. Might have been, but the more interesting part is that the river got named after him because he was potentially cannibalized on that overlanding expedition.
Yeah.
Could you imagine going out there with 22 people and coming back with 11?
Yeah. And then not only that, those 11 got on the next trip and did it again. It's like they went through the most horrific thing. Like literally, I think it was Robinson or Richards. Yeah, well, he was murdered, and they figured they ate him up a little bit.
They're starving.
They were hungry, right?
Yeah. And but one of the crazy things about those earlier, remote exploration trips is that they don't even start until they're going into what was, undocumented by, the Crown at the time.
Yes.
Right? So even like, for example, that overlanding expedition where they ended up, cannibalizing Robert Hood, very likely. That story starts at Fort Reliance on Great Slave Lake.
Yes.
That how hard it is to get to Fort Reliance on Great Slave Lake from England. They just leave that out.
Yeah, they
That's
do.
not even in the
they just got
story.
here and then.
Like nowadays, if someone sailed from England to Montreal, that would be like all over the news, right? Do you think that's what potentially interests people about some of the things that you do? Is that you're kind of one of the last sort of people that are kind of doing these things?
Yeah, well, the other thing is I do too when I go on my trips, I don't research too much. I pick the river out,
right?
But I don't go Google it and then find out where the rapids and everything are and the portages. I like to get that, what I call the explorer's surprise. You go up there with little to no knowledge. There's a river there, but you got to go up and figure it out.
So beyond your topographic maps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you carry what, 1 to 250,000s, or do you have 1 to 50s?
1 to 50s, a lot of it, if I can. A little bit more detailed and things, but I've used just those backcountry books. Laminate them and take that, and you just kind of follow the river, and you're going up and you see different cricks, and you look at your topographicals and you see your hills and stuff like that. So I've got a really good sense of where I am, and I've done an extensive amount of night paddling, and I've done that through Quetico Park too. And it's a very difficult park to go through. It's very rough in a lot of places. So when you can master that going through there at night, you could pretty much master just about anywhere. So except for Lake Superior. I don't recommend paddling at night on Lake Superior. That was the very first thing I did, and I regretted it pretty quick.
No kidding.
I left the Thunder Bay Harbor thinking, I'm going to go out. I've never paddled on Lake Superior before. This was in 2011, so I figured I'm going to paddle out through the breakwaters where the lake's going to be calmer because there's no wind. But the swells were coming in, and, it was dark. I had a decent moon, and then a rogue wave, I don't know if it came off one of the ocean liners or whatever, come ripping down and just about threw me in the water.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, the heck with this. Threw the headlight on, got off the water, and stayed there until light, and then took off from there. But the Lake Superior, by hands down, my favorite paddle of the whole trip. It was just, it's such a. The lake grabs you spiritually when you're onto it.
Yeah.
And she'll whisper, and she's good, but at the same time, she'll put you over your knee pretty damn quick if you're not going to pay attention to her, right?
Yeah. Oh man.
But the beauty of that. Of it was just incredible.
The watercolor, and
the
cliffs, and
the fishing, everything is just incredible.
It's also the last part of all the Great Lakes that's still wild too, especially when you get through on the Puckasaw coast.
Yeah, there. Like I was really, I thought I'd be seeing a lot more people on Lake Superior, because it's such a beautiful water. But I can understand too, you don't want to go in there on a beginner's level, especially around Puckasquaw and those places like that. You really want to know your canoeing. You want to have at least an intermediate to an advanced level on something like that. But there's places on Lake Superior you can still go on to.
Right.
But it's, yeah, just be careful with it.
You got to be careful. I don't have, it must be cool to have the experience with like literally paddling the full thing from, I guess, essentially Grand Portage to Sault Ste. Marie.
Yeah.
Would have been your, so like,
No, I never went through the Grand Portage. I had a little bit too much fun when I was younger there, and the United States government don't particularly like me.
Well, I mean,
But I've got out from Thunder Bay, from the Kaministiquia rivers.
We don't need to get into that. Yeah, but that used to also, you're trying to do a cross Canada paddle as well. So Grand Portage it used to be on the Canadian side, but now it's not anymore.
Yeah.
So you had to actually take probably what was maybe a trickier route.
Yeah, it was. We went through Whitefish Lake and then walked around it and then put back into the Cam River at, that would have been right at the Stanley Hotel there. Stopped in, got a Stanley burger, and then we headed on from that. I think it was about a 37-kilometer portage, somewhere in there. It was a full-day portage anyway.
Wow. Yeah. Were you able to use a cart for that? Or
yes. I brought a cart and everything with it. David had a cart for his canoe too, and we set them all up. And
So that was on your second cross Canada trip?
Third.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I thought I'd been following you for a long time and I've done enough research on you, but I didn't realize that you've done it 3 times. The third time with David, you didn't make it past Lake Superior because of the weather.
Yeah. That whole year we were out was just brutal for winds. It was really bad. Lake Superior or Lake Winnipeg really ate up a lot of our time.
Right.
And then we got onto Lake Superior in September.
Yeah.
And she's always given me a pass, but that year was just no go. Yeah, we pulled out on Red Rock there, and we called her. And I injured myself on the portage going from north to or south to North Lake. I stepped in a hole about a foot deep and wrenched my knee and rolled my ankle and. Oof. So yeah, that was tough portaging after that. It was quite the limp, and yeah, it just haunted me after that. Even when I got into the canoe on Lake Superior, just getting out to thing, and then David and I got into a couple real scares on Lake Superior with the wind and all that, and some storms that came in, and it was interesting. But it was good to have a guy like David along with because he's a pretty stoic guy when it comes to that.
Right.
And he was great. But I found David at that time. He was looking backwards a lot. He just kept looking back at that. At Whitefish Lake over that way. Not the burger joint. No, it was his girl Leah. He ended up marrying.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, he ended up meeting her on the trip there. So
David ended up settling permanently in Red Rock.
Yeah,
with Leah.
Yeah, with Leah. Yeah, it was kind of cool. I'd say out of everything that came out of that trip, that was probably one of the most successful ones that we've had. I mean, what a beautiful relationship those two have.
Yeah. And man, they got up to some crazy stuff.
Well, I mean, Leah was just like she's as thick as a whistle. She's but she's got that Finnish spirit in her. She's got the Sisu runs thick in that girl's blood, and she'll haul that sleigh just as readily as David would, right? Amazing. So I think that's what
did you call it? The what runs thick?
Sisu.
Sisu. What does that mean?
Sisu. That's it's in the Finn culture. It's kind of like when you're put into a resilient place, you got that extra energy that comes out of you.
Extra energy?
Extra energy. It's like that extended guts, like that perseverance that's well above and beyond that you should have, and you can do amazing things with it.
Do you think that everybody has that?
Everybody has it in them. It's just, it's what you want to call it, but I mean, sometimes it's called upon. Sometimes you fail the test, and sometimes you don't. And you definitely, if you know how to embrace it, you can go through hell with a smile on your face, knowing it full well that, hey man, I'm the hell coming through here, right?
Well, that's amazing. So that's some of your background is the
absolutely.
Finnish, I guess, your family come to Canada.
Finn and Métis. I'm half Finn, half French, and half Ojibwe.
Yeah.
I tell people because it takes a man and a half to pull off some of the stuff I do.
Amazing. Yeah.
But it is, and it's you got to have that. You got to have that drive in you.
Yeah.
I mean, the bush will eat you up. If you let the negativity get at you, it'll be on you the whole way through, and it'll eat you up. But if you can stay the positive and realize that, we got such good things happening.
How important is that to be when you're windbound? And when you're windbound is when you're, for people that don't know, when you're just basically stuck and you can't travel and you're on a huge body of water and these waves are huge and you can't go anywhere.
Yeah, especially when you're used to traveling every day. You're getting up at the crack of dawn and you're putting in your 16, 18, 20-hour days and you're doing that day after day after day and all of a sudden, stop.
Bam. Nothing.
You can't go anywhere. And it is. You get that antsy feeling, like you get that kind of a pace going. But again, I kind of learned after a while that you can't let that eat on you. Take a look around where you're at. I got stuck on Entrance Island just before Old Woman's Bay for 3 days. Oh. And it was incredible. First of all, when it was there, like the winds came in and they were so, like, with the winds hitting the rock and it was so windy, it was blowing at about 300 meters up and over, and we were constantly getting rained on. We just couldn't get away from that.
Yeah.
Which was all right. It was cool. I mean, slept good still, but the whole island was choked, right full of blueberries, about the size of grapes. Their bear hasn't gotten out there yet. So that's all we did for 3 days. We had blueberry pancakes, blueberry drinks, blueberry muffins.
Basically, we're just like bears.
Yeah, you pretty much, Spitzy and I were just sitting there just chewing on everything, right?
Does Spitzy eat them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
The dogs,
He's got a bad habit, that dog, was if I'd start collecting blueberries in a row, well, he'd follow right in front of me and take the prime ones.
No kidding.
But it was
they
was
do
good.
that. It's almost like some people don't want to teach their dog blueberries are good because they eat them faster than they
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, there was just so many there. It was like giver, you know. And we I could have stayed a week there, and it still ate good, right?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, and that was the trip that you were doing to raise money for a youth group in Atikokan.
Yeah, we kept the youth center open. Yeah, they were in threat of being closed down, and we had a hard time getting government support from it. You know, being a small town, and we're surrounded with a lot of city centers around us, so you know they get the majority of the pie, so to speak, because they're going to get in touch with more kids. And truthfully, city kids need a lot more help during that than a small town, but we still needed that. So I decided I was going to paddle from Rocky Mountain House to Montreal, and Bobby Davidson, my old boxing coach, and just one hell of a good man, you know, in Atikokan. He's always somebody the kids could always turn to, and he understood life's trials and tribulations. And so he convinced me. He said, Mike, let's do this for the youth center. He said, because we started our own boxing club up when we were younger and all. And I said, absolutely.
Nice.
And I said, let's see if we can pull this off. So I gave myself 180 days, 6 months to do it, and I ended up pulling it off in 130.
Wow.
So it was really cool to show the kids that you can do anything. Set your mind to it. Be honest and strong and true, and you can get through anything in life. We've got a pretty amazing country here. For what we have, there's a lot of opportunity if you take it. But you got to go get it. You have to go get it. Nobody's going to paddle my canoe for me. You got to be able to be the one to stand up on it and take care of the reins and just get after it. And don't worry about failing. I had no idea how to paddle on a big river. Yeah. I hopped in the river at Rocky Mountain House there, the North Saskatchewan, and I mean I was like a babe in the woods when I got on that thing with But eventually you just learn. So much power and fast, and it's intimidating. And but you just got after it. And eventually, you got used to that part. Then you get to big lakes like Tobin Lake, like that, and you realize, wow, I've never paddled on a lake this size. Or you get into Lake Winnipeg, and it's so overwhelmingly huge. And you got to look at this map, and you got to go right from one end to the other, and it's hundreds of kilometers, and you're putting in maybe 30, 40 a day, depending. On a good day, if I put in an 18-hour day, I can get about 60 kilometers.
That's a long day.
That is a long day, and I cook and eat right in my canoe.
Long. And that's on flat water too.
That is, yeah. If I can get a little wind behind me, all the power to it. But you've got to be careful how much gets behind you too, right?
Yeah, it gets a little too interesting. No, like I've done some long days on river travel. Done like 100 kilometers and stuff like that on a couple occasions. But that's nothing compared to when you have current. After you're paddling in current and you get to flat water, it almost feels like someone's dragging you backwards because you get so used to that.
Well,
nice
I was doing about, I think I averaged around 60 kilometers a day when I was on Lake Winnipeg, and I went down, cut through the middle, and got onto the east side, and then I hit the Winnipeg River, and I was going up that, and I was lucky if I was getting 7 kilometers a day.
Oh man!
So it just knocked you right back as you're paddling in some of those currents, and they're just pushing on and you're stroking along to it, and you're 50, 60 strokes, and you're still seeing that same branch in the side of the river.
And you're going upriver.
And you're going upriver, so everything's against you on a day. But what a sense of accomplishment when you get over and done it, right? And you get onto Lake of the Woods.
What was the hardest part of that cross Canada adventure?
It would have been the Winnipeg River.
Yeah.
In 2014, we had super bad floods. It was the highest since 1929. When I first got onto the river, I was right at the very first dam at Pine Falls. The Ontario Hydro guys came up to me and said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to Lake of the Woods. I'm paddling across Canada." And he says, "Well, I'm sorry, but you're not getting any farther than this."
Yeah, wow.
And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "We just got the call. We're opening up all 7 dams on the river. They got a lot of rain up in northwestern or up in Lake of the Wood area, and we got to dump it."
Wow.
So I'm saying, you're saying all dams are open. First time in the history on the river.
Wow.
They opened all dams up. So I had one hell of a
So
chore ahead of me.
You just
I
kept
did,
going.
Yeah, I did. In 2011, I did it in 9 days. And 2014, it took me 2 weeks.
Wow.
But I was literally going up the river.
So almost double.
Yeah, it was like there was places where normally I would be able to scoot, paddle right on the side and just, moving
back
slow.
eddies and stuff, right?
Yeah, and there was a lot of it where it was flooded. It helped me out a lot in some ways, but most of the time you're fighting that current. And then you had these dam slams coming down, and I go out caught in 2 of them, where you got this huge flotilla of wood that just come down, and it tears the shoreline and everything apart. I got really lucky on one where I come into an eddy, and I could hear this crunching, and I was like, what the heck? And there was a lot of water going through the woods. So I thought, instead of going around the point of it, I'm just going to walk right straight through the woods. I could see a line. It was about 100 yards. And what happened when I was going through the woods, a dam slam hit that point and just tore that thing all to shit.
Wow.
I was like, holy.
So a dam slam is basically a moving log jam.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they'll, like I said, they call them dam slams because back in the day they used to hit the dams and sometimes cause damage because there's so much weight behind them.
Right.
And they was tearing the trees right up, and I was just like, wow, am I ever glad I made that decision on that, right? And I seen another one go by a couple days later, and then, I mean, with the flooding at that time, there was gas cans and picnic tables and boats and furniture, everything that you could think of around a camp, those big cable spools and everything going down the river, right? So
Wild.
yeah, it was pretty incredible. And then getting up some parts of the river, I would literally have to wade. So I'd had about a 30-foot bow rope. Dog would be in the canoe. I'd have to walk myself up the river, tie the canoe off, walk myself grabbing branches up the river, tie myself off, and then take the canoe. And I only tied it onto a small twig, so I'd be able to break it off.
Right.
And then pull it toward me, tie it off again, and then I would go up again.
And this is just something that you kind of had to figure out along the way.
Yeah, and I did that. I had to do that for about 7 kilometers in one spot. And there was, at one time I got in and I got up, and just when I was broke off the canoe, the one I was tied to broke. So I lost like a half a kilometer. I went down that river again.
Man.
2 hours later, I'm looking at, that's the branch I just tied off to. But
Just don't even look at it.
Don't even look at it. Just keep going, right?
Yeah,
So you're passing over all these old things that you just worked your ass to get over across.
What a mission. I remember you telling me too that it was the beginning, when you started this, the longest canoe trip on record in one season. And I remember you telling me that the first paddle was in some sense, the hardest mentally, I guess.
Yeah, it was just getting that first step out, and putting that first day in and seeing how you're feeling and everything. And for me, it was like I was nervous because I'm thinking, how am I going to get through this? Get away from the injuries. And, when you're first going up a Fraser River, and everybody I talk to is like, you can't paddle up the Fraser River. You need a kayak. You need something slender. You're never going to get up there in a canoe. It'll take you a month. And I was like, well, I got to try.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who tell you not to do things or don't do it. And I mean, it was almost disappointing how many people told me that it's impossible to cross the continent in one season. People have tried, and they're naming off these people. And I'm like, but that's not my name. I said, I still got to try.
Right. Yeah.
And then, after you're done, it's people like, oh, you were lucky.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm going to do it again, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then again, people saying, okay, you got lucky the first time. The second time, come on. And I said, well, I found a shorter route.
So you did it, right, smart. Yeah. And you did it the first time you made it. And then the second time you actually crossed over to Cape Breton Island and continued to the tip of Cape Breton Island.
Cape Breton, and I ended my trip at the Dominion Beach at the Legion 175. Huge shout out to Mr. McNeil. He was one of the veterans that were there to meet me. He's an old dude up there in Cape Breton, and he's just, that generation that he thoroughly represents it. And Cape Breton, I said, I can almost bring a tear to my eye how much I love that part of our country.
Pretty cool.
I'm going back there this summer. I've got a friend of mine that's getting married, and she's doing her honeymoon there, and I'm going to go meet up with the boys again and tear up Cape Breton a little bit.
Right on.
I literally lost 4 days when I got there.
Right.
I mean, it was so cool. The police officers came out, fire crews all came out. They give me an escort right up to the Legion, and the people that came out there was just what a heartwarming place.
Yeah.
And then I had Mrs. McCauley's cabbage rolls. She made me a batch, and I mean that was really one of the true reasons why I wanted to paddle across the country.
They're that good.
I stroked that paddle a little extra when I got on that island because I really wanted to get a bowl of them cabbage rolls.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's just the Acadian culture too.
It is, and there was
renowned
so
for that.
much of a part of our, in World War II, it was the East Coast boys and the Newfoundland, and I mean everybody across Canada that really put in, but it was, the East Coast has got such a military background to it, right? And the people there, they're just, like I said, I smile every time I think of them. Everywhere I went across, the Acadians, man, I still don't understand sometimes what they're saying, but you got to pick the bones out of what they're saying sometimes,
Right.
especially when you sit down and have a few beers with them.
Right,
And
right.
my good God, when the music starts playing, there's no radio, there's no stereo. Everybody's got a guitar or a harmonica or a ice cream pail, and I'll tell you, the music those people put together on the East Coast like that, man, it's incredible. It's better than any concert I've ever been to.
It must be cool to sort of travel across such a large area and go through towns and then go through areas that are totally wild.
It
and
was,
then just kind of see these different cultures. Like, I remember one time I biked from, just near Toronto to Belleville.
Yeah.
And, the area that tons of people drive on, this main 401 highway again and again. But just seeing the farm fields and stopping at these little corner stores and taking the kind of the side road.
Yeah.
Just the way that you see the land is so different.
It is,
and
the people along with it. You get treated a little bit different when you paddle into a community, and they're just like, wow, how'd you get here?
Yeah.
Especially the First Nations. I can't say enough about how well treated I was every time I went into a First Nations community. I always went out of there filled right up.
Yeah.
The mothers of the community are so motherly. They want to make sure you're okay. And every time I got to another community, they already knew I was coming.
Yeah.
I called it like the moccasin telegraph kind of a deal. And I mean, just that. I can understand why, people wonder why, how come Canadians are so welcoming? How come they're so polite? That was one thing that we did appropriate off our First Nations. And that's recorded many times over the history of when voyageurs would come into it, and how well they were treated by First Nations. And it's...
So that's a culture that has brought from the First Nations.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
It is. That's how we got
know
to
that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why,
too.
when I paddle, it's for First Nations, for first responders, for veterans. These are the people, in my opinion, that made such an amazingly positive contribution to being a Canadian. It's why we are known for today. You can go anywhere in the world with that Canadian flag and you're respected, and people love it, and they got questions, and, they want to say, hey, can you, are you really as polite as you are? Kind of, we are, it's
nicer on average, some people would say.
Yeah, absolutely, because, I talk to a lot of people that come from all over the world in Killarney, and they always ask, why are you always so polite? And you always say sorry about things. And I said, well, sorry about saying sorry so much.
So true.
Yeah, I
So
said,
true.
it's just, it's a great way to comfort people and show them that, hey, you got a place here too.
Right.
And I think everybody does in Canada. We just have that diversity, and I've met every ethnical, religious background that you can run into, and it's all the same thing. And everybody wants the same thing: good things for friends and family. You want to see people do well.
What a kind of unifying way to sort of see the country, is paddling these traditional routes and meeting these people. And I hear, when you're out there paddling these waterways, we all know that the canoe is something that First Nations people have had for thousands of years, long before they, first contact and all that. And I think that you can't, even if you never read anything about Indigenous culture or anything, you eventually learn some of those same skills and those same mindsets from just being in the bush in those areas, right? I hear, you have some native blood as well, and you still, you'll leave tobacco when you're talking about when it's windbound.
I think that's a very important part of it is showing that gratefulness. And I always think to myself, the gods are always watching. You got the earth, the air, fire, water, Father, Son, Mother, Moon, and great grandmother Nature. And they're always watching. Show your respects, they'll show it back. There's a give and take, but Mother Nature also has a pretty big wooden spoon. She can use that at times too.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, when people are like, oh, it's just luck. And of course it's not just luck, but there are certain times when Mother Nature is going to slam the door. Like, for example, the first time when you made it to the Atlantic and you wanted to continue to Cape Breton Island, blizzards.
It was kind of a really
hurricane. Like, this is not something that, no matter how talented of an outdoorsman you are, you're not going to be out there paddling in the ocean in a blizzard, or you're going to die.
Yes. Yeah. There's there was a fellow I know you've heard of him. Who's the guy there from Winnipeg?
The guy that did paddle to
Starkell.
the Amazon.
Yes, Don Starkell. I met him once.
No kidding.
He was a very unique person, but the way he paddled, him and I were very different. If somebody said don't go, he would go.
Right.
He was one of those guys that just loved the challenge. But I mean, and you see how he ended up. When he paddled up to the Arctic, and wow, he's lost some toes and fingers and everything else. And unfortunately, Don passed away a few years back. But that was an avid paddler, bushman that just bowled his way through the bush. If you could get through it, go around. If you can't go around to get through it.
Right.
But the one thing I do is when I speak with First Nations, it's I listen carefully. You really want to especially when you're in their neck of the woods. And I've never met one that was going to treat you or put you in a stray way. It's really against their culture on it. You don't do that to people because it'll come back on you. So it's that's what I liked about the honesty of it all out there. It's
right. It really does. We had a friend, I won't mention any names, but back when we were in high school, he was doing this big trip up to James Bay, and he ended up stealing a canoe to do the trip. And he ended up almost dying. Him and his girlfriend at the time decided that they were going to nude tan, and ended up getting washed down a class 5 butt naked and lost everything. And they were just hypothermic, walking around in the woods for days. All he found was mosquito netting, and he ended up waving down a float plane that was out looking for him. There's choppers, because a fishing lodge saw their stuff float by and thought they're all dead. Yeah. And apparently he ran up and both arms, both legs, wearing nothing but mosquito netting, hugged the float plane pilot who literally saved their life, right? And that's what, after that, when me and my brother were like, never steal, not even a fishing lure. Yeah. If you steal a fishing lure, then,
it's not a good thing. It seems like even though you got away with it, you keep it in the back of your mind.
Well, so another buddy of mine, he stole, he was a younger guy. We did this trip across northern Quebec and Labrador. And we're like, get a good bud jacket. Don't cheap out. Yeah. He had like zero money, and he ended up shoplifting this bug jacket. And he stole the crappy one because he thought his rationale was, it's so crappy, I might as well steal it. Well, let me tell you, there's more black flies inside this thing than outside. And he just got riddled, and his whole face was swole.
The black flies are bad.
Ruined, like about to vomit, right? And we're like, well, Marty, this is why we tell you these things. So I agree with that, man. There's you do something wrong to somebody more than just there's something bigger at work out there, I would say.
Yeah, there is. When it comes to this. So it's it's the old adage rule: treat people how you want to be treated, right?
Yeah. That's pretty cool, though, that you paddled across the country and multiple times, that was your experience with people.
And one thing I really loved, what really caught to me was the different accents of people.
Nice.
Like from town to town. Like, I mean, you talk to people from the East Coast, and they got this accent that's just very unique. Then you go to Acadia, they got another unique accent. Same with Quebec, of course. Then you get into Ontario and northwestern Ontario and northern Manitoba, and all these got these really unique.
Nobody thinks they have an accent. Everyone else has the accent.
Exactly. I even had a couple times saying, you got a unique accent. Where are you from?
Right. Yeah. Well, in Canada, it's not as predominant because people haven't been in such a large number here for as long as in the States, where you have like raging like Alabama accent compared to someone from New York City, and it's all over
Boston and over in California or Oregon.
Right. Yeah, we still have it in Canada too.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Like, I mean, when I tell people, they say, how do you get into endurance paddling and stuff like that and do it? Start small. Just go out on the weekend. Try to make yourself comfortable sleeping in the bush. A lot of people have a tough time with that just because, there's so many elements. And like I said, you can hear a church mouse pissing on a cotton ball when you think it's
Love
a
that saying.
squirrel. When it's a squirrel going by, and you automatically think that's got to be a bear, right?
Especially in the dry leaves.
Yeah, I like one of my biggest scares that I got it on video when I was just young. I was only about 14, 15 years old, and I got this camcorder, and I decided I'm going to go out into Quetico Park, and I'll be damned if a family of otters come on the island, and they were running around, and it's pitch black. I had a little light. And I didn't know what the hell it was. I seen a little set of beady eyes, and I got it recorded. Well, if this is my last, I don't know what it is out there, but
Well, that's not something you normally hear. A bunch of otters getting all
yeah, and
squirrely.
it was funny, eh? Like, and I mean, if you ever seen an otter jump in the water, it's like poking a stick. They don't make no noise whatsoever, eh? And they were just playing by the rock. It was a whole family of them, and then finally it came light, and I realized what it was, and I kind of laughed to myself. Went to sleep.
You probably laugh when you listen to your
Oh yeah,
recordings.
looking back at that, I kept it. I should have erased it. I thought I should have erased it. No, I'm going to keep it.
That's
You know, it's just one of those experiences you have, right?
Yeah.
And
So let's go. Take me back a bit. So when you were a kid, how did you? Was there ever a time that you can pinpoint that was like, you're growing up in Atikokan, you have this sort of around you in your family lineage of people that probably came here from Finland to work in forestry or pulp mills, and all the different aspects, Indigenous side and all this kind of stuff too, where you're from. But was there a time where you're like, man, like this is like, I gotta find a way to do this stuff more?
It was. Yeah, there was actually, I was working the rigs. Like I said, when I first did start doing my paddling, I was, I was about 40 years old. Things weren't going right. I was fighting all the time, drinking, carrying on.
That's what you were boxing, though. You took
boxing. I
So you
was
get
always
to
known
win
as a
that
rough
you-
houser, right? Somebody ever came into town and they wanted to fight, well, my name would come up, and I would oblige.
So you'd have a boxing match.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's a sport. That's
it was a sport. Yeah, it was definitely sporting. But when I was really young, though, it was like my dad was an avid bushman. He was always taking us out, and even to this day, I go to the little lake back home called Straw Hat, and it was one of my first recollections of going camping with my dad. And we paddled out to this little island, and we caught bass for 2 days. And I just remember just feeling so good being by my dad. And he was so proud when I was catching these big pike. And he was saying, good job, kid, eh? And I remember just being so pumped listening to that. And to this day, it always just stayed in my heart, right?
Yeah.
But having the fun and listening to my dad and him pointing out things to me. My dad was an incredible bushman. He didn't know a whole lot about the edibles in the bush so much. Like he knew a few mushrooms here and there, but I definitely surpassed him on that when I started getting really interested in it and saying, Dad, this is edible. Dad's that edible. And, and then we started getting into hunting. Dad quickly learned that I'm not a hunter. I fully disappointed him as a hunter and trapper, right? He's just, and he's trying to explain to me, son.
I think you made up for it.
Yeah, and he's explaining to me why we do it in substance hunting, and I was just like, I get it. It's just I have a really hard time pulling the trigger, and I've never been one for guns. I'm not a big fan of them. I still don't carry them to this day, and. But I was telling Dad, I said, you can get the meat and potatoes. I said, I can get the fish. I said, and I can get us the salad and everything, And we've had some amazing meals in the bush where Dad and I would just go in with a frying pan and a little bit of flour, and we'd go in and we'd have these vegetables and we'd have fish and, and it was just cool. And it was a great way to learn the bush on that end and have that experience with my dad, and he passed away, well, it would have been 3 years ago now. It'd be 3 years ago in November. And I miss him terribly.
Oh, man, yeah.
Well, it's just, I do something in the bush, and you accomplish something. And my first thought was always, can't wait to tell my dad.
Right.
Right. And then he would tell a story. And Dad and I would sit there and laugh for hours about, and Dad sometimes would tell the same story I heard 10 times, but it don't matter. You'd still listen. And,
Right.
And, you share that experience, and it was cool. I could tell. And one thing I was blessed with is I had my father tell me he was really proud of me.
Oh, yeah.
So many times.
Yeah.
And that always sat with me, So when he passed on, it was always, I think I was right there with him right up until he passed.
Is that why you want to share that sentiment with some of the youth too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Same
sure.
Yeah. man.
Yeah.
I say that hits me pretty hard too, because that's something my dad was never the kind of guy who was like, oh, you gotta be a pussy, you gotta don't be a wuss, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. He just did it himself.
Yeah.
And so I just followed what he did. I guess we just carry logs around on our shoulders and carry canoes.
Yeah.
He never said, you got to be a man,
Yeah.
And
my dad was always, hey, settle down a little bit.
Right.
Quit fighting so much.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure he did that too. But just that, when I say to my kid, good job, or I'm proud of you, man, I just see that working in him. And it just seems such an easy, basic thing.
And it was a lot with kids is, you don't got to push them the right way, you just got to nudge him. Mm-hmm. Just give him that little bit, like, hey, like my boxing coach, he was excellent with it that way. He knew how to bring the best out of it, because a lot of us kids that were in there were troubled youth. And Bob would take the time out and show us, this is how you do things, this is why. And, and you teach a certain respect.
Right.
And, it panned out very well. You get a certain a certain respect in life, and you understand that being the bully is not the way of doing things. Stand up to that,
right?
And Bobby says, be honest and true, and you do that, you never have to remember anything. You don't got to, if you're going to lie, you got to remember that lie.
Right.
Because people will call you on it.
Yes.
So
and then
he said it's okay to bullshit for entertainment purposes, he says. But,
well, that's hyperbole.
Yeah.
That's so they say it's exaggeration for effect is hyperbole.
Yeah.
So if geez, Mike, you must have paddled 10 million miles.
Yeah.
People know it's not really 10 million miles, right? So
got 10 million strokes.
We cannot let the facts get in the way of a good story to an extent, as long as people understand.
Exactly.
Right? I think it's okay. But when you start lying, when we look to deceive, what a tangled web we weave. That's what my mom taught me.
Yeah, because I had a fella that was in Killarney, and when I was told him, what I did, and he came up to me, he goes, yeah, well, I paddled from Moosonee right around Lake Superior and then down to Michigan. I said, no, you didn't. Because you couldn't do it in that time frame. You just said it. Right? Yeah. So I mean, some people forget that. Sometimes they forget who they're talking to when it comes to time and everything else like that. And I've had several people tell me, I've paddled this X many kilometers in one day, no problem. And
I can't. So when people are listening to you, it took me 2 weeks to get up. What was it, the Winnipeg River? That is an incredibly fast amount of time. The amount of time, you must be just fast at breaking camp. And,
I do. I could break camp and be in the canoe cooking my coffee in less than 10 minutes.
See, that's just out of control.
Yeah, but I was I rolled up, and I mean, that's from the open my eyes, but I mean, when I got used to that on my 2011 trip, I was so scared I wasn't going to make the time frame. I was terrified that I was going to fail, that I wasn't going to get there. So I was so scared. Every morning I got up, as fast as I could get in, and I'd literally put a little stove in front, and I'd boil my porridge and my coffee, and I was paddling as hard as I possibly could, saying, okay, I got to get going. And I keep looking at the map thinking, I got such a long ways to go, And then I got to Lake Superior, and I was just like, wow, this is going to take me a long time. And it was 42 days the first time I did it, because I was so unsure of the shoreline. And I had a couple of real unbelievable scares in there that I thought, wow, if I would have dumped out, there's no way I would have survived that. Yeah. And so you kind of sit back and you kind of get a little antsy with it, and you take that day or two to get your bearings back in and, your courage back up, and you get after it. And then you start getting used to the fear.
Right.
And once it's embedded,
you're not scared anymore.
It's not so much it's the fear that it turns into a respect.
Okay.
And then you're off on that lake. And like I said, then you're listening. You never listen to a radio. As people, what kind of music you listen to? None. You're listening for that weather all the time. Anything that can come in and at you, right? Because that's your biggest danger on a big lake like that. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of people who go to those lakes, and that's the last they've ever heard of it. And there's been many of voyageur. A lot of people don't realize, but a lot of voyageurs couldn't swim.
Yes, that's right. And they didn't have any PFDs or
they
anything
didn't,
like
so
that.
they had a hell of an incentive to keep that, and with the tons of stuff they had in a birch bark canoe. Like you can imagine running, 4 tons of stuff in a 38-foot canoe or 40-foot canoe, and you run it up on a rock. You're ripping that thing open.
Yeah.
You know, and then what do? You know?
Well, that's one of the things that also amazes me about what some of the voyageurs could do is they could build a new canoe.
Yes,
You know
right
what
there
I
on
mean?
the shore. Like
that's another
David
whole
Thompson was
skill.
another guy I followed a lot. Like he was one of my favorite guys out there. And like they'd bust over the mountains, then they'd stop. They'd build a cedar plank
Dugout
canoe,
or whatever.
dugout
Yeah,
canoe
yeah.
thing, and then down the river they would go. Right,
Yeah.
I'd be just like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, like and I mean, in a few days they would
Even
build
on
this thing.
the Fort Reliance when Franklin got to Fort Reliance before he tried to get to the Arctic coast, he good dog, Spitzy's here. He looks like a little Wolverine or something.
Yeah.
But he would. They had to rebuild all their canoes.
Yeah.
So they got there and they're like, these canoes are trash. We need to now rebuild. Like these guys were busy.
Yeah, and it's not like they had planers and saws and everything, right? It was a hatchet and crook knife, and away they went. And it just amazed me. And I built a couple birch bark canoes, so I mean, I know the process that it takes to build these. It's very with what we have today, it takes me a long time to put one together. Let alone what they would have had back in the day of things. The materials.
Finding the materials, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
probably was easier when there's more large birch trees around. But did you actually go out and source the materials yourself?
I did, yeah.
How much of a process was that?
Well, you had to do it right at the right time of year. Back home, it was beginning of June. End of May, beginning of June is when the bark would pop off the trees. So I have 97 acres back home.
Wigwa.
And so you'd have to go up and, you'd strip it off and the bark would literally pop. And then you gotta season that bark too. Like you want to you roll it up, you want to keep it in water. You just don't want it to dry or it'll get super brittle. So there's a long process to it. But I imagine when they did it, they stripped it out, laid it down, put it right in its steel and let it dry out to that way. And
have you ever seen the Montagnais crook canoe, how they used to build those?
no.
So it literally looks like a whitewater canoe with a huge rocker in it. You know, it's just like a hockey skate, like the flatter your hockey skate. You know how it is.
Yeah,
right?
you put
The
your
faster
rockers
you
in
go.
there just so you can turn your canoe faster. I'm assuming
Correct.
that's what
So I guess they use it in the rivers, and it had higher sides, to it as well. So what they would do is they'd build it on a beach, and they dig a little hole in the middle of sand, and then they pile the sand up on either side of the hole, and then use that bottom to create that that rockered
the rockered birch bark canoe.
Exactly.
Really,
exactly.
That's
super cool looking boats, man. So you're beginning to tell me the story of essentially getting struck by lightning.
Yeah, it was an indirect. It didn't hit me direct. It hit off to the side.
Yeah.
I was going up the Winnipeg River, and I come to the Slave Falls Dam, and a microburst had come up behind us.
What's a microburst?
Microburst is a storm. It's a very violent storm. They're usually not very big. You hear of them every once in a while. They're like a plow wind. It's like a sideways tornado. And it come out of the sky just incredibly fast. And Spitz started barking, looking behind me. And when I turned around, I looked and I could see on the opposite side of the river, the tops of the poplars were rolling off. It was incredibly violent. And I was just like, wow. So I got to shore immediately, jumped out. Spitzy jumped out. I jumped out, grabbed the bow rope of my canoe. And it was torrential rain. This time you couldn't even see 10 feet. It was just soaked. When I was pulling the canoe into a little cove, I was just going to drag it in. There was leaves and there was sticks and everything falling. It was just incredibly wild. And just when Spitzy was standing beside me, and then I got this sense of an imminence, like everything slowed down, and I was just, what the hell? And I turned to look behind me, and then when it hit, it was about 50 feet away, took me off my feet. Spitzy got hit. He had a yelp come out of him. It was the loudest thing I ever heard. It was just incredible. It just floored me. And then I got up and I just realized, I was just totally didn't know what the hell, right? I had the power rope in my canoe. I got up. I pulled it in there. Spitzy, I couldn't see him. I got up and I started running around looking for him. I didn't know where he ran to. It turned out he wasn't very far away from me. I just couldn't see out of one side of my eye because I had a welding flash from the light. And I was just blinded. And then finally I turned and I seen him and he was whimpering and I grabbed him and he cuddled up to me and then as fast as that storm came in, it was gone. And then I got everything all organized there again, and things calmed down. Sun came out, and I was just ringing in my ears. It's all I could hear was just it was so loud. I thought I blew the eardrums out of my head. So eventually everything calmed down. I got back in the canoe. I was just an ache all over me. It was like I just had a full-bodied workout. I didn't know what had happened. I wasn't sure. Like, I knew it was a lightning because it was so loud, and I had a pretty good idea. And there was a little tree smoking behind me, and
wow.
I thought, okay, I just want to get out of here, right? I could see the dam, so I got in the canoe and I paddled over. It took me everything I got over the canoe, and then I stayed on top of the dam. It's just an ache. It was really strange.
So
and
you
then
got hit by lightning essentially, and then you got back and kept paddling.
Well, it never hit me. It was off. I got the residual effect of it. What happens when lightning hits? It disperses across the ground.
Yeah.
I just happened to be close enough that I caught some effect of it. It wouldn't have been a direct. If it were direct, I'd probably been burned as black as as coal. But and it just felt warm, like right. It's like there's something that just. And I was lucky. I was totally soaked. If I would have been dry, it probably would have been a way different story. But it just flashed over me. So yeah, then I was the next few days were difficult, and I couldn't figure out what was going on with me because I was seeing things, and I couldn't figure out what they were. And then later on, as I went, and I was confused. Like every time I'd hear something, I'd see something, or somebody would sneeze. I would taste mint for some reason.
Weird.
So I was concerned. So I was like, shit, I'm telling my dad this, and he's like, well, go check it out. Go to the doctor. What the hell, right? I'm not a doctor guy. So anyway, I explained to him what was going on, and he's just like, okay, I think I know what it is. So they sent me to a neurologist, and I talked to him what went on, and he's okay. And he explained it to me. He said, it's extremely rare. He said, but then he asked me, he goes, have you ever been concussed? And I said, well, I boxed for a number of years. I hit the mat a couple times.
Right. Yes.
One of those things, eh? Yeah. And he goes, any hallucinogenic drugs? And I was just, well, I grew up in the 80s. Yeah, a little bit of mushrooms, here and there. He goes, okay, any electrical? And I explained to him, yeah. I said, told him about, my past and that. And he just kind of smiled, and he goes, well, I think I got an idea. And he just give me a couple tests. And right away he said, yeah, we got an idea. Because when he rung a bell, I seen it in a cone shape. And I followed it with my eyes kind of. And he goes, what did you just see there? And I explained to him. And I was almost embarrassed. Because honestly, I thought maybe I was developing some kind of a tumor or something. I shouldn't be seeing things, eh? And he says, you got a classic case of it. He says, how bad? And I said, well, it's not distracting by any means, because you can lose your license over stuff like that, right? And he said, no, he said, you're just going to perceive things a little different, he said. And, he said you might, synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
Yeah.
Wild.
So it was, but that was probably one of the traumatic experience, I guess, a guy could have out there.
Wow, man. So
but, eventually the hearing came back and all that, and I just, So
this was on your cross Canada trip.
Yes. Yeah. It was
how many days were you laid up for?
About a day and a half, I guess, that really affected me. I kept moving. I got up the next day and kept moving, but I was sore.
Wow.
I just had that ache, you know what I mean? Like, and they say it was from the electrical. It's just kind of shocked your body. And most people, after they get something like that, even if somebody gets shocked by, 220 or something like that, they have that ache to them afterwards. And your body, your muscles got tense straight up. We run off electricity ourselves.
Right. So essentially you got struck by lightning. No, you didn't get struck by lightning, but you almost pretty much were very close.
It was very close, yeah.
Yeah, the closest I've had lightning is out on the middle of the lake, and I had this boat with these aluminum gunnels, and I swear I felt a shock on the gunnel when lightning came close by, like nothing as close as you, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah, absolutely. It attracts to the metals and stuff like that, right? Like, I'm lucky I wasn't holding anything metal. But my camera and my flashlight that was on top of the deck in my canoe were fried.
Wow.
So there was enough that went through.
So they stopped working?
They stopped working. I still have them.
God, wow.
But they were fried out. The little flashlight, I had a little mag light. I was on top of the deck of the canoe with my GoPro.
Yeah.
And they both got fried.
That's wild.
So that was, there was enough of a shock for that anyway, but... Yeah, you just get up, get back at her again.
Wow, yeah. And then so it doesn't affect you too much, but you notice.
No, I still notice it. Like I said, when I hear somebody sneeze, for some reason I got a mint taste in my mouth.
So how can they explain that? How come mint?
I don't know. It's like a crossing of wires. That's like I think of the number 6.
Could have been a lot worse.
When I think or see the number 6, I taste strawberries.
No kidding.
Yeah, wow. I don't know why, but
that
I do.
It sounds not so bad.
It's
strawberries,
not bad,
mint. Like it could, at least it's not like poo. You know what I mean? Like could be a lot worse, man. Yeah, I like strawberries and mint.
Yeah, I've never ate shit before, and I don't want to know what it tastes like.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, it's just something, It's not something I worry about so much. I mean, it could have been a hell of a lot worse.
Yes,
It's just something like the doctor said. It's just something you're going to have to just perceive with. It's not life threatening. It's not. He said it might distract you a little bit, but I find that now I'm starting to use it for thunder. The closer the thunder is, like the sharper the corners on a box that appears to me in. So I'm almost trying to get it so I could judge how far the thing is away by the sharpness.
It almost sounds like you have like some sort of special power.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
Isn't that how these superhero stories start?
I really wish it would work out. But I mean, after that though too is, especially in my 2014 trips, I got this uncanny ability to paddle for days. I don't seem to get tired. It was when David and I did. We just paddled about 70 hours at one time. David was just like, "Okay, enough." Mike. And I'm like, "Okay, I could have kept going a little bit more." But I thought, "Okay, we'll rest." But yeah, it was cool. And like having David on the side like that, like it was motivation for me to paddle a little bit more. Like I said, that year in 2017 was just a really windy year, and we really had to buck up. And yeah, it was one of my favorite trips, that one.
Yeah. How far did you make it on Superior?
I made it to the most northerly point at Gravel Rivers, so just past Comma Point on there.
Okay, yeah, and then it was just way too crazy. What time of year was this?
It was. I had an injury from when I fell on the north-south portage, so that was haunting me a lot, and so I sat down. I was windbound in this little camp, so I went down to the end of the dock, and I hung my boots over. And I was just trying to find a sign, and I asked, Mother Nature, I said, should I keep going? Like, I mean, this is extremely dangerous areas we're going to be going into. And right out of nowhere, there's big wave come up and just soaked me right from the knees down.
Right as you were saying that.
And I was talking.
What more do you need?
She was just saying, get the hell off my lake right now.
Yeah.
And I obliged. I got a hold of my dad. He was in Atikokan. He was a few hours away, and I said, "Dad, you need to come pick me up here." And he goes, "Yeah, I figured." He said, "It's getting pretty wild." He said, "And I'm glad you're getting off that lake."
Good. Yeah, I feel like sometimes you got to know when to pull the ripcord. I think a lot of people think they're going to take it like, "Oh, I failed," or "I didn't." I don't. I should have had more skill or something like that.
There was that. Like there was that. Damn, I really wanted to do it the third time and get through it and have, a great guy like David in the side there. We can really promote what we're doing and the message we're trying to get across. But yeah, Mother Nature had a little bit of change of plans, and it's only a failure if you don't come back.
Right.
So there was a sense of disappointment. At the same time, there was a sense of relief.
Did you start in Vancouver on that trip as well?
No, we started in Bella Coola.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we walked from Bella Coola to Kinbasket Lake. That was 880 kilometers.
Wow.
That was our longest portage. That was the longest one to this date that I did. It took us 30 days to get down there. And we got into Kinbasket Lake. And it was, we were windswept for 4 days at the end. And then we took off. I think it was more impatience on myself than anything. We got to the lake and I ended up dumping in the Canoe River.
Oh, man.
And we got to shore, lit a fire, waited it all out, and then got onto Kinbasket. And we had a beautiful trip from there. And it was...
And you're not really doing much of like the intense whitewater on these adventures.
No, right? I try to stay away from it. If there's a portage, I'll take it. It's I'm not really much one. David loves running those whitewater things. Right. A lot of people do, but for me, when I see a set of rapids, I'd rather go around. And I like mixing it up. Yeah. A lot of people say they don't like portaging. I like it. I like getting out of the canoe, walking, just changing things up a little bit, getting on the go, and then it was. It's interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sense. People probably watch some of my videos and think that, you have to run all these rapids or you have to paddle all these, challenging whitewater rivers that I often seek out. But really, at the end of the day, you're a smarter bush guy knows when to portage than when to run the rapids.
And I would rather go up a river than down it.
That's crazy.
Just out of the fact is you can't accidentally paddle up a set of bad rapids.
That's very true.
But you can go down them pretty damn quick. When I went up the Harricana River, that That was very challenging. Of course, I didn't look into
Right.
looking at the portages or what I was getting into. And, and I got to 7 Mile Island, and I went the wrong side of the island. There was a portage on the one side, and like I said, I didn't look into it, so I just, okay, I'm going to go this side. Wrong. David laughed at me. He sent me a text, portage is on the other side, Mike. I went, I'll get the next one. So I went up. I got to 1 Mile Island.
Yeah.
Made the same mistake. Went on the wrong side. But I mean, I went into places where very, very few people go.
Right.
And at that time, the Harricana was very low.
Right.
So there was a huge buffer on the side of the river that I could portage across and everything. That was the very first time I portaged naked. There was no bugs or nothing. Nobody around. I thought, okay, I'm going to do this.
Sounds very freeing.
It was free. There was no bugs or nothing, so I was doing all right.
That's cool,
But,
man. And this has been like one of the things that's interesting to finally get to see you is that you're kind of like the pokeroo today, or in the past. Oh, I missed him again. So when I saw you when you were going up the Harricana, you were camped outside someone's house on the Moose River, right in basically Moosonee.
Yes.
Before that,
yes,
right?
that was at Randy Coda's place, actually.
Okay,
yeah,
so
he was
I
an
was
ex-OPP officer there.
Yeah, so I was like across the street at the Chichu's place.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I was literally I came down. I didn't even know that you had this trip planned or anything, and I had actually come down the North French River that time, and I just paddled across. If you remember, there was a hammering storm. And I just paddled across the Moose River, and it's a tidal river, so it can be challenging.
Yeah.
It's super wide. And I look up, and who else's canoe is that going to be? I'm like, is that freaking Mike Ranta there? I'm like, that's so cool. But at this time, I was soaked to the bone.
Yeah.
I thought maybe there's a chance I still could have caught my train that evening. Turned out I was there for another 4 days. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll go in, and I'll go say hi to Mike the next morning. And I come, and you just vanished.
Yeah.
You weren't even there.
I think I stayed there the one night, and then I got up, and then I know there was a storm coming in. So I got up to the very mouth of the river, just getting into James Bay, and the tides were up and down there then. So I thought, well, I got to wait it out. It was raining and everything, so I set up, and not familiar with tides, so I was very close to getting swamped there, and I was just like, okay. So I got packed up, and then I decided, well, I'm going to go for it. They told me the guy said it would probably take 2 to 3 days to get to the mouth of the river. And I was like, okay, wow, I got to see if I could pull this off quicker than that, because I don't want to get caught on James Bay. I heard such horror stories. And these guys are saying, hey, man, when you go down there, you got to stay way back off the trees are just going to look like pencil tips out there. You're going to have to go 3-4 clicks out. And they're right. I had to go way the heck out. Luckily, not a breath. The whole bay was like a mirror.
Oh, wow.
I paddled as hard as I could. 16 hours later, I made it to the mouth of the river.
Yeah. And you switch sides too. You don't J-stroke.
I don't J-stroke at all.
So what do? You do 3 on one, 3 on the other?
Depending on your winds and everything, but I'll probably do anywhere from 3 to 4, switch 3 to 4. Depending, like sometimes you get a little bit of a crosswind, so you're doing 7 on one side, 4 on the other, just to keep your kind of straight. But I mean, I was hitting my paddle constantly on the bottom. It was so shallow, even far out.
I pushed when I came down the Casaugamy in the Harricana estuary, I actually hit a rhythm where I could actually just push with my paddle along the side. And afterwards, I saw this old picture of these voyageurs all poling along those flats. I'm like, well, I probably had the right idea.
I thought about that actually, and Randy had mentioned that to me. He said, you might want to be thinking about getting a pine pole. He said, just so you can get through those real shallow parts. You get 6 inches of water where your canoe and everything will float. But you just haven't got that enough purchase of the paddler to get in the water to give you a good push, right? Yeah. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, I got a long paddle. I picked up just a cheap one there from the store there, and it was about 7 feet long. It was like just a paddle you throw in the boat kind of a deal. Eh? So it was super long. So I ended up pulling a little bit with that. But then once the tide started coming in, I really got a chance to put onto it. And I ended up getting there right in the evening. And that's when we met those guys from... what were
Alex Trainer from Northern Scavenger.
Yeah, they were just coming out. And I noticed 2 canoes in the boat there and everything. And one guy recognized me and he said, hey, Mike. And I was like, hey, how you guys doing? I said, what are you doing this for? And he goes, no, big polar bear. Yeah. Big tracks down there. And, we got to get out of here. And when I was talking with the First Nations down there, they told me, if you see a polar bear down in that area, don't get its attention. It's probably sick and very desperate.
Right.
And a lot of times they'll head south when they're passing, when they get sick. So these guys were showing me the picture. Like, I mean, this thing was the size of a dish plate, these tracks. I wasn't too familiar with them, but, I thought, okay, these guys know what they're talking about, eh? So I headed up that river the next day, slept with one eye open, and then took on the river the next day as soon as the tide was coming in. And it was late afternoon. I come around a corner, and I could see it, and I thought it was a moose, big moose, and hunched over, eating, just whatever on the side of the bank. And then we got up a little closer, and Spitz barked, and this bear turned around and looked at me, and I've never seen a bear that size in my life in the bush. It was the biggest wild black bear I've ever seen. I would guesstimate the weight anywhere between 600 and 800 pounds.
Wow.
Absolutely enormous. I never seen one like that. And it ran up that hill like a cub. It just went in, all of a sudden the tag holders were just open and shut. And I could see the size of the tracks, and I knew then that's what those guys probably had roaming around down there. Thank God.
Yeah, well, they got back to Moose Factory, and we couldn't meet up because we didn't want to travel because it was that
was the band
pandemic.
Thing. Yeah.
And so they got back there and they said, yeah, we got this. We saw these polar bear tracks, so we decided to get a freighter canoe pickup, which is a long way. It's like 80 kilometers, and then 20 more upriver, or something like almost 100 kilometers.
Yeah.
And what impressed me at the time was that you were already at the Harricana estuary.
Yeah.
I'm like, how fast is this guy paddling?
I was so nervous about getting stuck on that part of the James Bay that I didn't stop for nothing. I didn't eat that day. Any minute I had, I put forward, and I mean, there was a couple of times Spitzy had to get out, to do his business or whatever. And like, there was a few times where the water had gone out enough where he'd jump out and do his thing and follow along a little bit. He couldn't drink the water, of course, because it was salty and makes horrible Kool-Aid.
Oh God, yeah, it's gross.
So we put in, and I was pretty happy when I got to the mouth of that river. And then
did you camp on the way one night then?
No, I made it all in one shot in one day.
That's unfathomable.
That's
crazy.
It was a lot.
I camped at Netatishi Point. So when I came down the Casaugah, I went to the Harricana estuary. Netatishi Point is the only place where there's actually sweet water that's not brackish. Yeah, and the bugs are horrific there. There's weird tides around there. And I remember getting out onto the tidal flats at James Bay, and I had these tide charts. Again, being foolish, they'll end up laughing at me in town, right? But I'm like, oh, we're at high tide, so I have some time to go. Not realizing that high tide is the tidal maximum. That's exactly when the tide starts going out.
Yes.
Right? So I'm like, oh yeah, high tide. Here we go. Got some time. Oh, there's an island. Maybe I'll go. And the islands are part of Nunavut, so maybe I'll go have lunch in Nunavut. Wouldn't that be? And all of a sudden, these rocks start poking up everywhere. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, and then all of a sudden I'm freaking stranded.
Yeah.
This was a couple years before, and it was a high water year, and there was actually it was a higher water year, and basically what ended up happening was I just decided to pick up and portage into shore because I looked at the tidal charts and it showed that the next high tide came in at 2 a.m. So that's what happened. A lot of people will just camp there when they run out of water. But then imagine the tide rolling
and
in
how
at
fast
2
it
a.m.
comes in.
Right. Yeah.
That's one thing that Randy and them, when they told me, he said, if you get stranded out there, he said, wait.
Right.
He said, if you start hauling your gear, he said, and that tide comes in, you're not going to get to
the rest of your gear. So luckily I had the tide chart, so I know this. So I thought I'd done my last portage. So I end up hauling all my stuff into shore. Where's the high tide line? I didn't even know that. I ended up camping on top of a drift pile that a huge storm knocked in. I was so confused. I tied my canoe to my tent, but I remember seeing a wolf track that was ripping fresh where the wolf had stopped and looked at me. Because I could see the way that it stopped. I could see it was looking directly where I came from. And I put my hand and I kind of felt the wolf print, which is a cool thing to do. And I just remember this wolf thinking like, what the hell is this guy doing out there? And then so I camped that one night. The next day, I ran out of water again. I camped at Netatishi Point. And then I pushed the next day and I made it to the mouth of the Moose River, but about a kilometer away. So I stayed put again. So that's it took me 2.5 days, and you made it all the way there in one day. I just didn't even know that was possible with the tides.
Well, I didn't think so either.
Yeah.
I didn't. I wasn't sure what I was going to get into, but then I realized I was starting to get pretty damn close to what I was going to make in good time. Mm-hmm. And
so where did you go? So you on that trip? So you did you start? You didn't start from Moosonee either.
No, I left from Killarney. Yeah, I went from Killarney. I left out the west end. I went up paddled over to the Spanish River. Made it up over the Spanish, over the Gogama, and then put in the Matagami River.
Okay. Yeah.
And took that all the way down to the Moose, and then around to around James Bay up to the Harricana. Went up the Harricana to what was that place? It was Turgeon Lake. I remember flipping a leaf because I come to a Y. Now you could either go left or right. And I flipped the leaf and it said go right, so that's the way I went. And I come up to Turgeon Lake, and then from there went to where the heck did I get into? Lake Abitibi.
Okay, all right. So how many miles of upriver travel?
About 650, I think.
Wow, how was that river going up? Because that's
That's
some powerful rapids on that. Like people raft that.
At that time there wasn't a whole lot of water going down it, so I kind of lucked out being late in the year a little bit. So I could get up there pretty decent, and like I said, the banks were so open, from the floods and all that, and then being just a trickle going through it. So I had a really good, really good way of getting around, and it was all rock. The only thing is, as soon as it rained, it was like snot in a glass doorknob. It was just all that algae come out. I got caught once. I was doing a really long portage. It was about 2 kilometers, so I got into the habit. I usually only try to get about 250 meters away and then go back and switch my packs, and I was doing 3 packs. I don't like getting too far away in case of an animal. Bear or something comes in, grabs your food pack. So I was on my way back, and I just had to take the canoe. My canoe was the last one. I had all my packs. I could literally see my packs way up there, and then this rainstorm come in, just whoosh. Wow. And everything was so slippery. It was that algae that was on the rocks, and it was just, I had such a hard time. And a little bit of wind with the canoe. I fell twice, but nothing major. Like, eventually you know how to fall down with a canoe, right? You
get better at it.
You get better at it, yeah. So it took me a long time to get to those packs, and I had to camp there. I literally couldn't move anywhere with that. It was just way too slippery. But I had a couple unique experiences on the Harricana. The one was I got my foot caught in the boulders when I was wading up the river. It slipped in between the boulders, and then another boulder locked down on me and caught my ankle bones. And I mean, that's a very painful thing. Try to pull your foot out of something that's aching. I was in there about 15, 20 minutes.
Are you kidding
I was close to pushing the button because I didn't think I was going to get out of there. And because it was, every time I went to go pull my foot out, it was so painful. There was 2 rocks that just pinched.
So were you partially in the water
I was up to my belly.
No kidding.
So one thing I was worried about was thinking, wow, like if we get a wicked rainstorm upriver, I'm going to get a flash flood.
Yeah.
And I'm trapped here. So I'm thinking, if I can't get this out, I'm going to have to call. Like, I mean, I was getting to that point where every time I pulled it, it was so painful. Finally, I got my other paddle in there, that long one, and I managed to get it underneath that rock that fell onto my foot, and I just got it just a little bit out, and as hard as I could, I pulled out, left my boot in there.
Wow! And so you just boot's gone.
No, it was in there.
Did you get it back?
I had to get it. I had to go. Once I got in there, grab the hold of it, I could pull it out. Yeah. But I mean, that was a unique experience in its own right. Because I'm thinking
the struggle is real, because you hear about people getting their foot stuck, and you don't think, well, how rare is that? Well, sure, maybe it doesn't happen, but it can happen.
It can, and it did, and it was unique. It was, like I said, it was one of the first times I really thought about pushing that button, because I thought, if I can't get my foot out of here, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble.
That's why it's good to try. What did you have? Like
I had a DeLorme, the InReach,
Yeah. And so
that's always great, because I can always keep send my dad a text and stuff like that, and let them know I'm okay. And I mean, that's the beauty part of the technology nowadays.
It's true. It is nice. Yeah. Like it's like almost like there's no excuse not to have something like that out there.
But I had some pretty cool experiences up that river. One of the freakiest ones I've ever had. I was. Spitz and I would always get into this. We got into this routine. So we camped out. I'd try to stay up into the spruce on the side of the river. Didn't really want to camp right out too exposed, and no place to put my tent pegs.
Right.
So we'd go up there, and it was like clockwork. Around 4:30, 5 o'clock, Spitzy would get up, give me a little woof, and I'd open up the door, and he'd go out, do a walk around the tent, do his business, and then give me a little bark to come back in. And it was just got so nonchalant, like I would do it half in my sleep. He'd give me a little woof, so I'd open up the tent, and away he went. So a few minutes later, he gives me another woof to come back in, so I opened up the tent, bring it in, and when he came in, he kicked a a leopard frog the size of a small baseball mitt. And that frog jumped and landed square on my face. And if you've never had that happen, when something lands on you and then starts wiggling, I went like that. And I don't know if frogs secrete something when they're scared or confused, but it didn't taste very good. That's
Gross. Yeah.
So I got this frog wiggling on me. It was almost big enough to grab my ears. So I'm like, half asleep going, what in the fuck is going on? This frog jumps out. Spitzy's losing, chasing this frog around the damn tent. And I'm like, well, I got to get up now. I'm not going to sleep through this.
So the frog, like, because
that was one of my freakiest things I've ever
toads
had.
will like piss when you catch him or sneeze.
Yeah, well, this was a leopard frog.
Yeah, I didn't know they did that, but I've
I
only
don't know
seen
if he did.
one leopard frog that big in my life, but they do get that.
Yeah,
big, eh?
I couldn't believe the size of the damn. It felt a lot bigger when it lands on your face like that too.
That is the craziest. What are the odds on that?
Yeah, like 100% that day.
What the
So I
hell?
kind of had to laugh about that one, right? I was thinking, man, oh man. First thing I'm thinking is alien, right? Slap
Oh,
it on.
guaranteed alien. I would have just been like, for sure, an alien.
So we got through that. A few days later, the winds hit really hard. We couldn't even be on the river. It was that bad. Like it was just white caps, and so we hauled in, and there was a little camp there. And I didn't bother staying in the camp. The door was locked, so I stayed just on the outskirts of it. And I'm sitting there. I got my candy. I got a little bit of a sweet tooth, so I'm having a little bit of candy.
Nice out there.
Spitzy's sleeping right beside me, and I'm just laying in the tent waiting. Yeah. So I heard this snap, and it sounded like a stick broke under a pillow. You know what I mean? It sounded really off. It didn't sound like a normal thing, and I kind of stopped and hesitated. And I was thinking, what the hell was that? And listened for a bit, nothing. It was nothing then, whatever. So I flipped the page. I was memorizing Robert Service poems, and
Nice.
all of a sudden I heard a bah, bah, and I knew what that was. And that bear stuck his head right underneath the vestibule of my tent, and I could have backhanded him. He looked right at me, and I looked right at him, and I said, "Get up!" Spitzy got up because he smelled him, and then he was loosening. But that bear looked at me. And, I mean, I haven't showered in like 2 weeks, right. Hair out to here.
Wow.
That bear was just like, what the hell? I'm glad he reacted and backed away and he didn't go forward on things.
Well,
right?
he's probably just coming in to figure out what the heck
By the look in his eye, I think I was the very first human being he ever seen.
Well, this is a very remote area.
Extremely
very,
remote.
very far from the closest road. And at this point, you're too high up river, so nobody's getting up there in freighter canoes.
No, you weren't. No, there's no way you're going to get up past 7 Mile Island with a boat. It would have been impossible. But that was a unique experience. So then I was worried. Oh shit! Like, I got 2 sides of the tent. I didn't want Spitzy running out because if the bear's sitting right there, they're incredibly fast. So I mean, they would have just swatted him. So I let him out the other end.
How I would react.
And it was. Well, I mean, it was shock at first, when you got an animal. I mean, it wasn't a small bear. It was about a 200, 250-pound bear. And you got this head sticking, looking right at you and just, holy shit, right?
Wow.
And then, so, I mean, again, I've never had the fear of bears.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that one, kind of took the shock out of me. I was just like, okay. So then we got out and looked around. Spitzy did his circle thing, took off in the bush barking, and I've never seen hide nor hair of him again. We were there for about 3 days, so he never did come back. So I think he got his scare.
That's wild. People say, bear's scary. Well, okay, well, would you have been more scared if it was a person sticking their head in your tent randomly?
Probably. Yeah. Right? I would think, who are you and what are you doing here?
Why wouldn't you said hi, right? Yeah, but it's just a surprise, though.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of bear experience, and I can't really recall. I've had one slap on the ground in front of me. I was in Quetico Park at the time doing a solo trip around. This was with my very first dog. And he was a killer, this one. He didn't allow anything around camp. And we stayed on this little wee island that you could literally walk across to get onto the mainland. And I got up that morning. I was making porridge like I always do. And then I could hear Spitzy barking. And I look over, and there's a yearling bear pacing back and forth on the shoreline. And he was slapping the water. And I'm going, okay, this ain't acting right, eh? And then he started coming across. All Spitzy and I tore off after him, put the run on him. He went back in the bush, but by the time we got back across to the island again, he was only about knee deep. He was following right back. So he's getting more brazen. So it was a little bit too much water for Spitz to go after him in, and just enough that he could walk across, kind of. So I was pretty nervous about that. So after pacing, I ate up real quick, got all my stuff packed up, and he's still going. Spitzy's barking at him to get off, and he's trying to get across onto the island. So I got everything in the canoe in a hurry, and then I backed away, and I just banged twice in the canoe, and he'd jump in the canoe. And as soon as Spitz jumped in the canoe, and we got about 2 strokes back, that bear was right on the island sniffing around where we were.
No kidding.
So he's looking for food.
Yes.
He might have gotten some, it seemed to me like he might have gotten some in the past, you know, because a lot of people, what they do is they see a bear and they drop their pack and they run. Worst thing you could possibly do.
Right.
You know, because now that bear is looking at, hey, there's a food source.
And also, if you're starting running, you kind of start.
You could kick prey. You could cook. You could definitely spook their predatory instincts in. It'd be like throwing a cotton ball to a kitten. You know, they could sit there docile. As soon as they see something moving or running, then right away they're thinking, "Hey, that's a food."
Yeah.
You know, or
that's what these experiences though. Once you live through them and they make good stories, you look back and you think, "Well, that was pretty cool."
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah.
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 What
and
about
I
was going to say, what about the one with, I think it was a calf moose?
Yes. Yeah.
You
that was
actually filmed that. So
did.
we should plug, by the way, if we should plug your Facebook page here, Mike Ranta's Paddle.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of this interesting stuff. But that was one of the ones that, because you don't do much filming, but you actually got
Yeah.
that.
I was actually just happened to put the film on. And then I seen a cow with twin calves. And just when I was looking up, the one calf took off one way and the cow and the other calf went the other way. And he ran into the river. And I was thinking, where did he go? So when I paddled up, I seen there's this little moose. And I mean, just newborn, trapped underneath and getting swept underneath the underbrush. So I was like, oh, wow, this is not a good situation. But I felt so guilty. I didn't want to have the little one perish. And I've always had a thing for animals. So I ran over there, grabbed the little one by the ears.
Yeah.
And eventually wrestled him into the canoe.
Yeah.
He got him out from under the underbrush, and then he walked out. And then I didn't want to touch him too much because I'm not sure how Mother Moose would react to that. So anyway, he got out, and they're really good swimmers right from birth. Any animal can swim quite well. So we got up on the bank, and that's when I noticed he was a little bull. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then Mother was sitting on the side, and I thought, he's safe. I'm out of here.
Wow.
And Spitzy acted really good. You know, I mean, he was, but I got it on. If you punch in Mike Ranta Calf Moose Rescue in YouTube there, you can get the whole deal of it. And then when I went across and around, and that was on, what river was that? Going through Saskatchewan, lower Saskatchewan. Oh, this is going to bug me now. Oh,
this is the one where you saw the moose?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the one that flows into the Assiniboine.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that river
I'm not
called?
sure.
That's gonna bug me now. But anyway, it was pretty cool. But it was a really windy river. And then when I got back around that corner, I can hear her calling him and him calling back, and I could distinctly tell that it was a mother moose.
Does it ever
that
do
was
that really deep thing?
Yeah, well,
I think that's when they're telling that there's danger around. They do that.
They'll get that buck
but that
too.
really deep. Which is like if you don't know what that is, that'll scare the crap out of you.
You betcha, and that's the whole idea of it. I think is. But I mean, to me, the most dangerous animal in the bush is a mother moose. In those first few weeks of when they got a little one, you don't want to mess with them at all. There's been a lot of people trampled and killed by them animals that way. And they don't bluff. They're not like a bear. A bear will slap the ground and give you warning. A mother moose will come at you with both barrels loaded for bear.
Yeah.
And they're not in a good mood.
So you were taking a pretty big risk to go and
I
try
wouldn't
to help
have done
this
that
calf.
if it would have been a single calf. Because that mother would have. I was only in about 4 feet of water.
Yeah.
She would have come in there like nothing and
So you knew, so you had the bush knowledge to know that it was going to stick with its other calves as opposed to ditching it to
That's
try to
why,
save the other.
you know, why ducks have so many and, you know, sometimes moose have 2 calves because they know that one of them, good chance one of them are going to perish, right?
Right,
So
right.
it's,
Yeah, well, everything wants to eat them.
I mean, that's the thing. Wolves, coyotes, they got a lot of enemies out there when they're little, when animals are little, so... But yeah, I did felt good. It was one of those accomplishments afterwards. You really think back and go, and it was pretty nice to help an animal like that, right? You know, it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah,
I've never had a little baby moose in my lap before. So.
Yeah, wow. Was it heavy?
Yeah, he was pretty, well, he wasn't that big. He was only about maybe 4 feet long, right? But I got a hold of him and then, you know, muscled him into the canoe and, you know, and you could tell he was confused, you know, and he probably had a little water in his lungs and everything, but I was like, hey, you know, take care, little one. You know, talk to him soft, and Yeah, it was a pretty cool experience.
That's really neat. Yeah. No, I like those little moose when it's rare to see them that small, right?
Yeah.
And even a calf that's a year old, you're talking about a huge
That's a big animal.
by
You
that
betcha.
point.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. That's
But I've
pretty
always
awesome.
had a heart for animals. It's just something, my dad he would say when I was a kid, he said, "You'd be sitting there talking to birds," he said, "and animals, and squirrels would come up, run right up on my lap." And, and that's same within Killarney. I got a family of otter there.
Yeah. Oh, but
Yeah, I've got a lot of that on my YouTube too. There's a
kidding.
family of 9 when I first got there. And a lot of they wanted to get rid of them because they go into the boats and stuff like that. They make a mess.
And that a lot of the fishing lodge guys don't like them because, let's be honest,
they don't eat that
pound
much, right?
Well, it depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, but I mean, mostly they eat crayfish and clams. They're not really ones to chase down fish. They will.
Fish are hard to catch.
They are, yeah. They're pretty quick. So, but I was taking the scraps from what we were getting at, and I'd sit down on the dock, and pretty soon they'd come right up to me, and I got one Teresa, I called her, and she'd jump right up in my lap and take smelts out of my mouth.
No kidding.
Yeah,
and that's just at your place in Killarney.
Yeah.
Why haven't I seen that?
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of them on YouTube there. I put them out there,
It's your
but
YouTube
they're very
channels-
rare, and for me, they recognize me.
Right.
So I'll take a thing of fish with me, and I'll go paddle, and they'll follow right along with me in the canoe. And I'll give them little pieces in there, and they're just an amazing animal. That's why I'm actually starting in Killarney. I'm building an 18-foot canoe with a glass bottom.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I want to build that just for one of those reasons, because if I can get loons or otter and stuff like that to come around, I think it'd be a really neat thing for people to bear witness to, right?
So is that going to be heavy, or is it going to be
it's going to be
plexiglass or actual
It's going to be a 1/4-inch plexiglass on the bottom. I'm making an oval window, so I'm going to do cedar strip and then put an oval window on the bottom.
That's so neat because you hear about these you see like a glass bottom kayak or boats and stuff. But why has nobody made a glass bottom?
Yeah, I know.
canoe?
I've never seen one, so I decided, I'm gonna do it. I talked to the boss there, and he said, "Yeah, give her."
Yeah.
He said, "I think it'd be a pretty neat thing."
Cool. What a neat town. And so that's at Killarney Mountain Lodge.
Yeah, in
So
Killarney.
you do actually
Killarney's
have
an
to-
amazing little town. We got a lot of good people there, that's for sure. It's and it's one of I think it's northern Canada or northern Ontario's oldest settlement.
Right.
It started in 1820.
How long ago did the road even go into there?
1962, I believe, was when it first broke in.
And
there.
that's a long road. Like, so I feel like in Killarney now, I haven't been there a ton of times, but I feel like there's just something a little different about it. Just about the culture, the people.
It's one of those places you leave there a better person.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? You got Herbert's Fisheries there. That's the infamous Herbert Fisheries, the best fish and chips in Canada by far.
Big lineup.
Big lineup. Yeah, you bet. I mean, hey, good food, good prices. And then we got a lot of great restaurants around. We got the Gateway with Dave and Andrea down there. They opened up, I believe it was last year. Now they did renovations, put a nice ice cream shop in there.
But just the character of these older buildings on it, where it is. It's hard to put
even
my
the people
finger on it.
they're quite colorful there, that's for sure.
Right,
yeah,
but super friendly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and then
That's one of the
lodge
best
there.
moves I made was going into Killarney, and I mean the opportunity there, and it's just immense. Like I said, it's just a beautiful little town.
Yeah, absolutely. So you work for the lodge then
Yes.
specifically as well too? Yeah.
I'm going to be building a lot of the trinkets and stuff like that for tourism, for making souvenir paddles, and
Woodworking.
and memory boxes. I started making memory boxes, so this little box that you can purchase, and then put a little something in there from Killarney, give a little memory, and
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's just one of those places. I recommend everybody to come take a look at. I've got the world's biggest paddle there.
Yeah, so tell
Built
me about
the Big
that.
Dipper. Yeah, that was another dream I've had for years. And talking with Holden Rhodes, and explain to him what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. For appreciation of our World War II men and women. So kind of a funny story. I built the model paddle I wanted to make and showed it to him. And I was originally going to do an 80-foot paddle. And he's going, "Yeah, perfect. Let's do this." So I'm thinking, awesome. So we ordered all the wood, got everything all in there, and he's going, "You know what? Let's make it 100 feet."
Yeah, this is how these things start.
I said, "Okay, well, I could do that. Just add, section in it and all that." I ended up making it 110 and a half feet because my math wasn't that great. But
Good size for me, probably.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. And then I asked Holden after, I said, "Well, why'd you want to go 100 feet?" He goes, "Well, I want to make sure nobody's going to break this." 'Cause, and I said, "Well, good, because the last section I put together in the paddle, I didn't lock it. So if anybody builds a, say, 120-foot paddle, well, I'll just pull that bad boy apart and put another section in there.
So you just have
I'm going to defend my title.
You get that title. Wow, no kidding. And where's it displayed?
Right beside the Canada House Lodge. That's the largest log home convention center in the world. And yeah, it's proudly displayed there. Like I said, if I want to put a table in there, and then I got a couple ideas how I want to hang some paddles in there, so if people want to put something up in memory of a veteran or a paddler. You know, we got something you can sit back and, you know, drop a little tobacco for them and have a good positive message for it, right?
Absolutely, and that was actually the meaning and purpose behind your third cross Canada canoe trip.
Yeah,
was it specifically for support of veterans?
In my 2016 too, yeah.
First Nations veterans.
Yeah,
and
I lost some good friends in 2015, whether that World War II and North Korea era, and they really meant a lot to me.
Yeah,
and I really wanted to say thanks to that generation. You know, it's a generation we owe so much to. You know, the sacrifices they made, and they were the greatest generation.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to put something together like that, and I can't say enough about Holden and the lodge and Carrie and everybody down there that supported me in all this. And yeah, it was literally a dream come true to put something like that together, and to have it displayed the way it is, and you know, people coming in and recognizing it, and you know, it's a beautiful feeling.
That's
for sure,
really cool. Well, it's just it's one of those fun things that I feel like everybody loves.
Yeah, and
right?
we got a time capsule that's going into it too. So of course the pandemic was the time, you know, in 2020 we were going to do it for the 200th anniversary of Killarney, but pandemic had hit, of course, and that shut down everything. And so yeah, I think we're going to do it in 2025. We want to put a canoe symposium in Killarney. It'll be one of the first canoe symposiums.
Do you need any presenters?
Absolutely.
I know a guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really colorful guy, tall guy, redhead.
You're in.
Right
But definitely, yeah, we want people to come in and tell their stories. And like I said, just to encourage others to get into a canoe. And I mean, we're going to have a canoeing symposium and an actual place where you can actually go canoeing.
And perfect, both at the same time. And I can't imagine a more beautiful place, that little channel. One of the times that I went there, I was been there a few times, but we circumnavigated Philip Edward Island.
Nice.
What a freaking gem
it is, isn't it? I love it down in there.
No portaging. Zero.
No, you zip around, and I mean, there's 1,000 campsites. I mean, everybody around there's just, I mean, there's enough people around there so you're feeling safe. And again, we have never had a bear incident or any kind of animal incident that I could ever recall. Like I said, the bears walk literally right through town. We had a moose last year walk right down the main drag, hop in the water, and go over to George Island right across the way. So I love the fact that the animals are comfortable enough that we can all coexist there.
Yes, in a safe way.
Yeah, like we got deer walking in town, and we've got, I've never seen one before, a fisher cat.
Oh, cool.
We've got one of them hanging around. The first time I seen one last year with cubs.
Oh, wow.
So to see little ones of that.
I saw one right in this area last year. Got a really good long look at it.
Yeah.
But there's no lynx in this immediate area here.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but there's more fishers. So yeah, if I've maybe, I've probably only seen a couple in my life before.
They're well, I would call them like a lesser wolverine.
Right. Well, they're from the same family.
The weasel family. Yeah.
Did you know wolverines actually spray?
Yes, all they all do.
Right.
I had a little I had a little weasel once, a little ermine. My friend Kathy gave me a call up and said, "Mike, I got this little animal here. I don't know what it is." She said she drove up in the driveway and the streak went across, and then she got out and she can hear crying. And here's this little animal about the size of my pinky, just as much fur on it, a little tough on the back, and then eyes closed. I didn't know what it was. No idea. I've never seen anything like that. So I thought, what's the chances of this surviving? Is very little, but you got to give it a chance. So I made up a little slurry with some cat's milk, some kitten milk, and some. I put omega-3s in there for the oils, and a little bit of honey, and I fed it with an eyedropper. And the damn thing lived. They're as tough as they get. They grew fur and everything, and then all of a sudden, pow, I realized my dad said, "That's an ermine." I said, "That's a lesser weasel."
Wow.
And it was just cool. But yeah, after a while, it was my buddy. I mean, it would crawl on me and everything, and then one day it was just nope.
Yeah.
You're not my friend anymore.
Oh, and it went feral on you.
Feral on
Yeah,
So I had to keep him in a cage.
Yeah.
And I had him in a hamster cage with the wheel. And he would get that wheel going so fast, you'd smell plastic. It was just, that thing was...
They're not built for ermines.
No, it's hard to describe the speed. But I had it in a 3-tiered cage about 3 feet high. And I would dare, my friends would come over to see it. And I had a lot of trappers come around because they've never seen one live like that.
No kidding. Yeah.
So I'd get them. I'd say, put your finger just that little bit in the cage. I said, and see if you can pull it out. I'd coax him to the top of the cage.
Right.
And you'd put your finger in there, and you could not pull your finger out of there before he bit you. It was just a blur. From when he went down to the top, you couldn't see him. He was that fast. It was incredible.
Yeah.
I just loved that though, right? And I ended up I had some property out there at Whiskey Jack Lake, and I ended up letting him go out there. And,
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear people say that it's a good thing that ermines or that weasels aren't as big as bears, or we'd all be screwed.
We'd be screwed, yeah. But that little bugger, if you scared him, he would spray.
Oh, yeah.
And they just burn the eyes right out of your head, eh?
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Well, how far would the spray go?
He would just pee right where he's at, pretty much. But it was so pungent.
And you could smell it.
Yeah, it was so pungent.
I actually had my brother saw Wolverine on the Seal River.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's that?" He's like, "It's a Wolverine." And then by the time I looked, I just saw the shaking branches. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see it." I'm like, I'm like, I was gonna lie and be like, "I kind of saw it," and then I'm like, "I didn't." You know, so I'm like, we got to pull over. So I just believe you. So there's all this really dry caribou moss there, and you can see like absolutely perfect Wolverine tracks.
Nice.
So I'm following it. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, these are looking pretty fresh. And all of a sudden, I just hit this wall of like this dank, thick, heavy smelling, and I'm like,
just grabs you.
I'm like, what is that, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, these things freaking spray.
Yeah.
So it must have known that I was following it.
Give it a little shot just to let you know not to go any further.
Yeah, and so I didn't see a Wolverine, but I had one spray me. So I'm like,
the only one I
cool.
think I seen one, that was when I was going through Banff. I watched something run up the side of the hill that I have never seen like that. And it was like about an 80-degree angle, and it shot up there like nobody's business. But I never got a really close look at it.
Yeah, it's sort of like what you do, process of elimination. Yeah. What else would it be?
That's the only thing I could think of. And then the other time, David and I, when we were walking through the Tatla Peninsula or the Tatla Plateau, we had one walk across the road in front of us from quite the distance. But I knew that was a Wolverine just by the way it was moving. And
so you've seen Wolverines, but never Fisher.
Yeah, well, I've seen the Fishers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've seen the one in Killarney, the one with the cub there and all that, but not on my travels. No, it's very rare that you'd see them. They're just so elusive.
Yes, yeah, they are. Well, Wolverine too. When I was up in the Yukon and doing a pretty long snowmobiling trip just this past March, and I saw what I thought was like a little, brown, like the same color as a Wolverine off the trail, like in the bush, kind of move. And I'm like, I stopped, I turned off my sled, and I heard like just some noise. I'm like, shit, I just saw something. Like, was it part of a moose leg? Well, no, the bottom part of a moose leg is too thin. Like, wouldn't it be that? I'm like, geez, what the heck would it be? And why would anything be coming around when these snowmobiles are here? Literally 50 feet down the trail, I saw traps. So, including Wolverine sets, like with the conibear traps and then some marten sets and all that. And the trapping season was over and the traps were hung up. But the guy left the springs set, but whatever. Yeah. And I'm thinking, that's what made me think, well, this might have been a Wolverine because that's why it would come to. Yeah. So, it would see, the trapper's coming. And it's like, where's this trapper been? I want to rob all these traps and eat all the animals out of them, because that's what they do. Oh, yeah. And so that's what I'm like, that made me think, well, shit, I think that might have been a Wolverine. We were trying to rush, so I didn't have time to get off trail and walk through the deep snow.
To even try to get into. Like, there's that guy, he was from Banff, and he was studying them, and he followed them for 2.5 years and never seen one.
Wow.
So and you ever see that one where they put a tracker on him? On the
think
Wolverine, and they let him go, and he runs right up to the top of a mountain in like 20 minutes, and then right back down again, and they're all like, why would he even go up there? There's nothing.
For the view.
Yeah. It was just like, they're an animal with zero fear.
Right.
Like they'll see a grizzly bear with something, they'll go over there and chase the grizzly bear.
Well, they have the hardest bite
Yeah.
out of any animal next to a hyena, any
Yeah.
mammal in the world.
Yeah, they chew the bones. That's what their
Yeah.
main diet is old bones and stuff because they're scavengers. Eh?
Yeah, they're wild. They're
Yeah.
super cool animals,
Yeah.
right? And nothing really wants to mess with them just because they're so ferocious.
Yeah.
But I saw a video of them sliding down hills, having fun like
Yeah.
otters. Otters are in the weasel family too,
Yeah.
right? And I saw them having fun playing and stuff like that. So I think maybe
absolutely.
they get more of a ferocious, reputation than maybe they always have. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because people see them like
Well,
chase a pack of wolves.
I'm a
off
firm
of
believer
hill.
that animals, no matter what they are, even insects for that matter, they have the same feelings as we do. They look after their little ones. You know, I have people say, "Oh, animals don't have the feelings we do." Well, go over there and try to take one of their little ones,
Right.
and see how that pans out.
Right.
It don't matter whether it's a mouse or a squirrel or whatever;
Right.
it's going to come after you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look at people that have studied with chimpanzees for years, and there's so many similarities.
Yeah.
In good and bad.
Yeah.
Like chimps will go and steal territory.
Yeah.
From their neighbors, and they'll do and literally these same sort of traits that we have for bad, but also for worse. And there's no way anybody that's has a dog.
Yeah.
Will completely disagree that an animal can't love or an animal
Yeah.
doesn't have feelings and stuff
Yeah.
like that, right? Like
And be a little bit vengeful.
oh yeah, and they maybe poo in your
Well,
basement.
My second dog. Oh my! He was. We got into Thunder Bay, and that dog had gas. And I mean, every time I got in that tent, that little bugger would let one rip, eh? And I was getting upset. Like, get the hell out of the tent if you're going to do that. And he just whatever, eh? So we got into Silver Islet.
Right.
And Saxburg's owned it at that time. It was Lauren and Maureen, I believe. And so I went in there, looked on the shelf, and there's 2 cans of Alta Hot Stag Chili. So I'm thinking, I'm going to get this dog back, right? I'm going to pound this chili, and I'm going to get me the gas because it always does. And I said, I'm going to get that dog back tonight, right? Yeah. So I pounded those things, and we took off, and we were camped by just west of Foster's Point. And I set up the tent and everything, and I had go, and it was bad. So Spitzy gets in the tent, and I got in the tent, and we're laying down, and Spitzy just kind of lays down, and I opened up the blankets and got him, eh? I said, hey, how do you like it? He gets up, his eyes are blinking, he does 2 circles and pukes on the end of my sleeping bag.
Really? Stag chili.
Get the hell out of the...
So you got him too good.
I got him too good.
Man, that must have been
Kicked
good.
him out.
That must have been.
Oh yeah, he was funny. He was a good pup, but
some dogs have the gas, man. Like I had one dog.
That was getting a little ridiculous with him, eh? Like I mean, it was like, come on, Raf, like what the hell did you eat, right? And then I ended up, then him with skunks. He loved to mess with skunks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there's
no.
a few times he had to stay outside the tent.
Oh no, right. Oh man, you should. Me and the family were driving out to BC last September, and we were in near Thunder Bay, near the provincial park there, Sleeping Giant.
Yeah.
And so we see like maybe 400 meters away from our tent, we're going for a walk, and we see a skunk, or my wife does, and she's like, it didn't seem that scared. I'm like, whatever, so the dog's sleeping outside, I'm in a tent, she's in the trailer, and all of a sudden I wake up with this, when you're so close to a skunk you can't even smell it, and I'm just like, feel like my brain's melting, and I'm like, oh no, I know what this is. So I call my dog over because he was like just kind of tied up to the trailer, and I reach out and I touch him and I smell my hand. I'm like, oh no.
Oh man.
So the next morning, we're only in Thunder Bay, we gotta drive to Telegraph Creek. Right? So it's like, what do you do with them? I'm not putting him in the back. So anyways, I just scrubbed him out as best as I could. Used all our toothpaste and tomato paste and soap and whatever.
What I find the best for that is Fast Orange.
Oh, okay.
It cleans it up really good because skunk spray has an alkaline to it.
Right.
So it's a base. So you need an acid, like a tomato juice, vinegar, lemon juice, to combat it.
Right.
So you need that to...
So what's this Fast Orange
Fast
stuff?
Orange is like a hand cleaner.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that tends to take the smell out a little bit. Luckily, with the finished spits, when they get sprayed, I don't know if it's the coat they have on them, but they just shake it off. They'll stink for about a day or so, but then it wears off them quick.
Not my dog.
But no,
The smell from the back seat, Mike, was unbearable. especially with the kids and everything back there. It's just like windows open. It's like -4. We're just like, whatever.
No, don't.
Yeah. Brutal. What are you going to do
that? That and porcupines. But luckily, my dog hasn't gotten into any of them yet.
Oh, yeah. My dog, North did, but some dogs will get into one and then they'll know
They'll
forever.
know back away. That's what I'm like this with these dogs. They're very leery on getting into anything. They stay back usually. So I think they'd have a hard time with a porcupine, but
what were Finnish Spitz raised? Bred
sporting
for?
dogs. They're used for everything from moose to birds. Mostly upland birds, though. They're excellent for partridge hunting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
He's,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he really knows how to get them on the go, and he'll flush them. He'll get a flock up, and he'll stop and he'll look. Yeah. And then he'll go after one.
It's amazing those dogs that you don't even need to train, isn't it?
No, like I haven't pulled a gun out with this dog yet, but my first dog, or first and second dog, I grab a gun and they know what that is.
They're not scared.
They're not scared, but they seem to know what it is. And they're just like, let's go.
I had a dog like that too. Yeah, it was just no issue. Yeah. And what I did with North, just so he wouldn't be scared of fireworks and get gunshots and run away and all that kind of stuff, I ended up getting a starter's pistol.
Okay, yeah.
It was awesome. So I started on the little acorn blanks.
Yeah.
And I started just shooting it while we're playing. Hey, come here, boy, come here. Like, hey, get the stick. Here's a tree there. Yeah. You know what I mean? So then he's right and get them all. And then slowly went to louder ones. And then just people duck hunt not too far from here. And, and I would walk him and he'd hear that. And now he's not scared. But I just noticed too that he's not scared from like the broom falling over or loud noise.
Yeah.
In general, he's just chilled, getting him used to that kind of thing. But he might have some elk hound. Are you familiar with elk hound?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I figured you probably would be because it's another, dog originally from Scandinavia.
Yeah.
But those hunting dogs, it's elk hound, it looks almost like a husky.
Yes.
Right? But if you see, so he's from Blind River, and you see he's got those little marks at the side of his eye there. I don't know. I know a lot of people brought him over, I guess, from the pulp camps, from the lumbering camps in Northern Ontario. And then some of them started getting used by natives as moose hunting moose hunting and whatnot.
They'll circle the moose back to you.
Right, which is what so a friend of mine who's a Ojibwe had that, and the dog used to just automatically do that without training. But they're cool because a lot of those kind of like dogs that we have here, those hounds or labs, they don't have the thick coats.
Yeah.
Right? Those are mostly like the huskies or something like that.
Right, they got that double coat to them. So, they can literally crawl up in 40 below weather and it doesn't bother them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know a lot of people don't understand that. That's for sure, because I had my dog out this winter in the bush and everybody was going, man, that's so cruel. You shouldn't have your dog out there like that. He must be so cold.
If your dog needs a coat, you need a coat. I'm like, that's like saying if I'm in a plane, if I need a parachute, the eagle needs a parachute.
Yeah.
Like we're like totally different species. Like what is that logic is terrible. Yeah. Like
and I've had people say that too, like, it's really irresponsible to have your dog out in these trips and everything. I'm just like, he's living his best life, man.
Yeah. It's just like, oh God. It's worse, honestly. And then when you start doing trips with kids or any outdoor content with your kids in it, apparently kids should be completely bubble wrapped, and it's worse with dogs. It's like the attitude, and don't get me wrong, I think it's nice that people treat their dogs well, but at a point you're killing them with kindness.
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, what kind of life are you leading that dog if you're always going to have him on a leash and he can't run?
Mm-hmm. Or he's just literally anything besides being completely as fed as he wants and 100% comfortable at all times is bad, and you're mean to them. That's sort of like what some people seem to think in today's world about dogs, which is just like terrible.
Well, I just tell him, come over here and take care of my dog for a day. Just see how much he listens to anything. Yeah. He's pretty comfortable in his skin, that's for sure.
Yeah. What is it about traveling with a dog that you like?
Well, the companionship. Mm-hmm. It's having something to listen to. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that he's so alert.
Yeah.
And he's cheeky. He's got a sense of humor. You know what I mean? And then there's times when you're down. Whether you're in a bad mood because of weather or whatever, the pup will come up, wagging his tail, give you a lick in the cheek, give you a little nip, say, come on, let's go. Come on, let's get after this.
Right.
And you get that, you're right, And he's always in good, right? Like
I find them just to be entertaining. Like watching them do cool stuff.
Yeah.
Is just something to talk about. Like my dogs are trained when I get to a rapid, they'll jump out, I'll run the rapid, and they'll follow the trail and wait right to the end and jump back. And sometimes they've gotten to the first eddy after the rapid that I couldn't catch. And the dog's like, "What? You can't catch that eddy? Like what?" He's like, "You missed the eddy? Like I thought you were supposed to be good at this." You know what I mean? Like, right?
Now where do we go?
Like how do they? It's just that kind of sixth sense they have is cool.
Yeah,
right?
it was good that way too when I was going up to Harricana, because there was a couple of times he was pretty brutal going up. Didn't want the dog in the canoe, so he'd jump off and he'd follow right alongside me.
Get a little exercise.
He'd do a little bit of exercise. He'd be looking in the bush all the time, and if he's seen anything, he'd give me a little bark, keep me alert. And then just here we go. Yeah, he's it's definitely worth it. That for that matter too. I don't bring a gun with me ever. I'm not a big fan of them. So
travel lighter though too.
A lot lighter for sure. Yeah, like I mean, there's times like I can never remember a time when I ever needed one.
Right.
I've had like I said, you have animals come in. Like you said, a bear comes underneath. That wouldn't have been an instinct of mine to shoot it. And having a dog is the best deterrent.
Yeah.
Bears are. Their biggest enemy in the bush is wolves and coyotes. That dog, that bark. The bears hear a bark, they're not going to come around. And any bear hunters at all, the last thing they bring with them is a dog.
Right.
Because the bears just won't simply come around them. And that's just about every bear out there.
And I think that some people sometimes get mixed up because it's different than, especially if you're in grizzly bear country and you have dogs that are in one place. Let's say you live at a cabin full time.
Yeah.
That sometimes they could attract bears in there. But when you're traveling and you're from space to space, it's a different situation.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you got to make sure that your dog too is familiar with the animal. You don't want a dog like you have, and I've heard this happen before. It's happened to my uncle at one time where his dog went after a bear and the bear turned on the dog and he ran right back to him.
Right.
So then you got this bear barreling down on you and your dog's hiding behind you, right? Which I don't got to worry about that with Spitz because I see how he handles them. He always goes lateral. A good dog will take off and go the other way and try to draw the animal away from him, right?
Right.
And or put him up a tree to whatever.
Yeah.
And there are some dogs that you definitely gotta watch and make sure that they're not gonna bring something right back to you either, because that's a big danger.
Well, yeah. What happens sometimes is the dog will chase the bear away. The bear will be running, and then the bear will run and be like, "What the hell am I running from this for?" Then it'll turn around and chase the dog back. Into camp.
And sometimes the dog might even think it's playing.
Right.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Do you carry bear bangers or bear spray?
I do have a bear spray I take with me, but I keep that. I mean, that's a thing that you really got to watch too. I mean, I think more courses should be put on those things because people don't understand how powerful one of those little sprays are. And this is one of the examples they had. This was up in Hinton, Alberta, where this family, they were foreigners. They come in and they bought a bear spray. They just bought it. And they lined their kids up outside.
Like that, like coming up
they're from Asia.
Okay, yeah.
And they lined their kids up outside and sprayed them because bear spray. They thought it was like a bug spray.
Oh my God, really? Oh my God, that sounds like a joke someone would make up.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I guess if you can't read English, it's
not very well. You think bug spray,
bear spray? Oh my God.
When you get a chance to talk to David, ask him about the bear incident at Jasper when there was another family, young family of Oriental. They tried to put their baby on the back of a grizzly bear to get a picture. No. And the bear kept walking away from him. And this guy's trying to catch up to this 800-pound grizzly bear to get a picture with, and he thought they were tame.
Right. Well, people that they're originally from areas where they don't have any, like we're
zero wildlife.
Yeah, and
it's not their fault by any means. I wouldn't bash them on that end, but I mean, they just thought they're having a good time. But
exactly,
it had to be explained to them
all the time, right? They think it's like an amusement park, and that this is put here for this. Yeah, they don't just the misperception is crazy.
And you don't even really got to be from out of country to
I was going to say. I won't mention any names, but we had a friend of a friend up here who looked at the opposite side of the river. We're in a bit of a canyon here on the Meg, and the way the rocks fall down, and she thought that they were all placed there. Yeah, that someone had put them there. Another situation, we're at somebody's cottage, and we're walking down, and it's granite, and we're like, "Oh, it's slippery here," and they said, "Well, why would they have made it like this? Like, why would they have made this slippery?" I'm like, the Ice Age? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
I had
right?
one young girl.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
from down in the States,
Yeah.
and a sweetheart. But I mean, she was. They were down from the southern part,
Right.
And she looked at me. We're at Nim Lake. We're about to head out on our trip to go into Quetico Park, and she looked. She goes, "What do you guys do with your islands in the winter?" And I got totally taken aback. I said, "Well, what do you guys do with your islands?" Well, during the hurricane season, we pull them up and strap them down. And I'm trying to think, can you imagine if the government had to take every island off the lake and put them back
off at Georgian Bay?
just off George?
50,000
Never mind trying to
islands.
put them back in the same spot the next year.
Good Lord. Yeah, so they have, where she's from, they have floating islands. Then,
Yeah,
right?
they had man-made islands.
Yeah,
And I said,
that's
no, these ones
wild.
are all right in there.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were in their shoes, we'd be doing the exact same thing,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of education, and I hope through some of the adventures that you do, and that I do too,
Yeah.
we can, get more people outdoors, get some of these, these phobias and stuff sort of
Absolutely,
out
yeah.
of people's minds, and because we all know how great being outdoors
Well,
is for your mental health,
It's the mental health of it, but I think it draws an honesty out of you. You can't be malicious in there. You just won't last with it. So I
Right.
mean, when you start being honest with yourself, you start being honest with other people around you, and it just snowballs from there, right? And I just think everybody needs that little taste of nature, especially nowadays.
What do you mean by honest with yourself? And what is it about the bush that is so kind of grounding and connecting?
Well, you can't bullshit your way through anything there. Everything's very real at the time, right? There's nothing false. There's nothing artificial about it. Especially when it comes down to crunch time on things, and you get yourself into a situation like, say, maybe your canoe drifts away.
Right.
That happens to a lot of canoers. Especially nowadays with these really light canoes, they get blown off and then bang. There you are stuck in the bush. Now your skills are going to come in. Where you got to walk out, 20 clicks or so. You got to think, how am I going to do this now? So it's not something you could really BS your way into. It's like something you got to have those skills with you there. And like I said, it draws the honesty out of you. Because you do have to be really super honest with yourself when you're in there, because you're setting your limits, especially if you're by yourself, if you're doing solo.
Right.
And it's accepting them, learning them, and then taking your time to develop them and moving along.
And what do you think it is? Yeah, and it kind of brings out your kind of real personality too.
Yes.
In ways, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think it is about kind of just being in the bush life that makes you feel good? It makes us feel happy.
I just think it's an ancient energy that we
Right.
all got. Like there's a naturalness to it. You could feel that comfort in there. It's like there's the fresh air, for one, being in there. When you're in a city setting, you're constantly exhausted and all this stuff.
Don't realize how like claustrophobic you actually feel.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you're out in the bush, and it's just there's, like I said, there's that honesty, and then once everybody, you sit down and you see this beautiful sunset, and it just strikes you. Like this is where you're supposed to be.
Right.
And that's something for me. Like, you work hard all day. Sometimes you go through the most horrible things. You're not feeling good. You didn't get enough food in you, and all of a sudden you're stopped, and it all ends when you got a beautiful sunset, because that's your only reward at the end of it.
Yeah.
Is that pretty sunset, and it's not always there, but you learn to appreciate the simple things that happen every day.
Yes.
And you can just, this is a good thing, especially if you got somebody you care about with you, right?
Oh man. Yeah.
And you get to
a
share
good pup
that, right?
anyways, at
Yeah,
the very
good
least.
pup,
But,
yeah.
at the very least. But no, I would agree with that. And I also think too, one of the beauty things about canoeing, so like, I do some trips and use snowmobiles, and I did one in the Yukon. We went into this lake that was 70 kilometers away, the way the crow flies, from a small little road into Alaska, so very remote, but you don't really have the same appreciation or feeling when you get in there without having to do much physical work. It's still cool, but I think like everybody knows exercise makes us feel great, natural endorphins, and everyone knows nature makes us feel great, right? Put those two together, and that's how our
And then you get an
ancestors
addiction
lived.
you can't get away from.
Right.
That's what I tell people. If you want to get into solo canoeing and doing what I do, you got to be extremely careful, because it's extremely addicting.
Right.
And it changes your life. And you got to be prepared for that. So do other people around you. Like, because I mean, it's like if you go to a party or something, that's all we're talking about is the bush and this and that, because that's what we know, right?
Why do you think I started these podcasts?
Yeah, but I mean, people are interested in it. Like, I mean, there's a huge green push right now. People want to get out into that bush and get an understanding of what our natural environment is. A lot of people thinking it's going to go away and that, we're getting so far along, and as humans,
more development.
For taking over this to that. And I think Canada being as vast and as wide as it is, I don't think we'd be able to put everybody we can in there, right? Like, it's, but I mean, it's just, there's, like I said, there's just a beauty in it.
Yeah.
There's just a beauty in it that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's that, and everybody can do it.
Yeah.
Get that sense of nature in you. Get that, like I said, just fresh air, exercise. And you're right, working hard to get to a place, and when you're there, you appreciate it that much more. If somebody just gives you the money, just gives you the experience, you can say, wow, it's a great experience, but you didn't work for it. Once you work for something like that, man, that just brings out the best. And then people are impressed by it. And they get you that little bit of respect more, because you're thinking, wow, how the hell did you get up the Winnipeg River like that?
Right.
Because every dam I went to that time in 2014, every one of them told me, this is as far as you go.
Right.
And I said, well, then you guys got to put a donation in when I get to the next dam. How's that? And they did.
Amazing.
Yeah, Manitoba Hydro, Ontario Hydro, all these guys have been really, really good, and always treated us with nothing but respect. But I made those guys, hey, man, I made her this one. How the hell did you get up past these rapids, right? I said, well, it was tough, but I did it, right?
Just one step at a time, I guess.
One step at a time, you bet. Get that, just, my rule was always move forward. Even if it's 1 kilometer a day, try to get forward. Just try to get that little bit. We learned that on Lake Winnipeg with David. Said 6 hours, pow, winds come up, get in, down for 2 days. Get a little break, hop in and go. Let's break down your camp in 10 minutes, get moving
and just make a little bit of progress.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, travel obviously traditionally, I mean, humans have only lived in cities and that for a blip of our existence, right? We don't know it because we just were born when we were born, right? For most people. But you hear people say, oh, progress, happiness is progress.
Yeah, you've always got to move forward with things.
Right. But I think that's so true. Like, I think there's some truth to that. I don't think it's progress is we need to build more factories and build all these kind of things. Maybe some people think that. Yeah. But just on a very basic level of just getting up and you have a destination and you make it this much further in a day when you're in the bush is a great thing. And, on a smaller scale, if you get up and you decide, I'm going to clean out the garage today, you'll probably feel better than if you did nothing, even though cleaning out the garage sucks. Yeah. Right? So that I think that's
an accomplishment.
Yes.
And it needs to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's where people think, well, why would you do these hard things? Well, sometimes in the moment, it might not be the funnest thing ever, but it sure as hell is afterwards. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, I'm preaching to the choir, right?
So it's absolutely true. You got to put that effort into it. Yeah. Like I said, nothing's more gratifying than when you work super hard at something and then have it come to fruition, and get down at the end. And I'll never forget the moment when I pulled into Cape Breton. You know what I mean? And then it was surreal for me when I sat down and I predicted 200 days I was going to make it, and I made it in 200 days. Wow. And I know that I touched the hearts of a lot of kids that were watching me right from BC all the way across. Yeah. And I got a chance to talk to them and say, how'd you do it? I was being honest. I worked hard and I stayed true to myself. Yeah. And that's how you do it. You can accomplish anything if you do that. Yeah. But it's being true. Stay away from, you got to put good things into your body. You can't be pounding all these drugs into you and drinking. That doesn't do it. If I drank on that trip, I never would have made it. Alcohol is so detrimental on it. My rule was 1 beer. Right. That's it. I'd have a beer. And if anybody ever asked me, say, hey, come in for a coffee or come in for a beer, that was my rule. I had to stop and talk to him. Right. So you did that. Yeah. No matter where I was in the day, if somebody said, come in for a coffee, I'd stop in and I'd have 1 cup of coffee and I'd explain to them what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, stay there for 15, 20 minutes and and they'd go like, wow, thanks for stopping. Awesome, man. And then move on, right? Especially when there's kids around. Yeah. It's showing those kids, you betcha, I did cross. I paddled all the way across here. Yeah. And you could see the look in their eyes when you open up a map of Canada and say, I went right from here, and they're just, it baffles them. Crazy. Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, you can do it too. Like, I just love it when people come into Killarney too and we get to chat. Yeah. And I get to hear their stories. Yeah. And a lot of them say, it was only a week trip. You probably don't want to hear. No, I want to hear about it. Right. A week trip, you can have such amazing times.
Yeah. Oh, I want to hear about it too.
Yeah, like I love the weekend warrior thing. People come, I don't canoe like you do. I just go into these. It's like, hey, I've never been there before.
Right.
Your experiences are just as important as mine.
Yeah, anybody that's been into a lake that I've never been to, I want to hear about it, especially if I know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of fish were there? Where's the camp?
Yeah, there's one that I got on my to-do list. It's called the Devil's Gorge, north of Thunder Bay, north of Armstrong.
Oh, cool.
And it was where Lake Agasaki, they figured that's where the glacier broke, and it was pouring in, and it made these 800-foot hole.
Wow.
And it just brings out, I just thought, my buddy Brad pointed it out to me, and he's like, I got to go there now.
North of Armstrong. So you're getting up there.
Yeah, it's up by Panagril, up that way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stipulation. It's a provincial park, kind of a restricted park, but I really want to go in there and check it out.
Cool, man.
First Nations up there too, and everything, right? Like
I've never heard of that, man. I'm gonna have to check.
Yeah,
that
the
out.
Devil's Gorge. I looked at that and I was just like, I gotta go check this out, right?
Man.
Because they go in there with just a drone and stuff. And
wild.
I talked to one fella, John Nelson, was in there, and he said it's absolutely spectacular. He said it's just beautiful, super tough to get into because you got to go up over this huge cliff face before you can get down into the bowl. Like.
Right.
So I thought, oh, there's a challenge.
Well,
So I could probably throw that into
You do seem to like those.
I do. I love the tougher it is to get into a place, the better. Yeah.
Well, that's because there's less people there, and you're gonna get
That's
more,
the whole thing.
more
of it.
reward, right?
I love going to a place where very, very few people go. Like I love Killarney Park. It's a nice park, but there's just so many people in there.
There are, yeah.
And it just gets to the point where you.
By the time you get back to
privacy.
Lake of Three Narrows, it's not so bad. But then you're doing a portage. There's 9K of portaging to get in there and back.
Yeah.
But
But it's a beautiful area in there.
It's
like,
crazy.
My God, it's and I'd recommend anybody to go in there for beginner to intermediate. Beautiful place. You got a lot of people around in case you do find any kind of troubles to whatever. And we get a lot of people, like say, come in from Toronto, Sudbury, and all the areas around, and they have a good time in there. Like I said, I've never had any complaint other than you get the odd person who rolls their ankle or something like that, and you got to get them out of there. But
just scenery wise, it's
scenery
crazy.
It's
it looks
incredible.
like
it's
just the quartzite, everything, the
and you
colors,
got
and
the pink rocks. So that's the potassium feldspar that's in there, and it's just like I said, it's just an energy in there that just, like I said, it makes you, everything's really positive. I think I don't know if it's the quartz in the rock or whatever it is, but the clear waters.
Something about it, man. Just everything together. It's cool, man.
Well, that's that whole Georgian Bay area. Like you go down to Indian Head and all that, and just into the Killarney Bay, and I mean, it's just fabulous, right? And there's so many places to go.
It's one of for sea kayaking mostly because it's big water, but it's like a world class sea kayaking destination, Georgian Bay.
Yeah, and you get a lot of yachts that come in through there and
you
everything.
Through
and
Killarney,
And,
but speaking of, before I forget, I wanted to remember your next big trip. Speaking of beautiful areas, you told me a bit about it, but what do you have planned?
I'm going to circumnavigate Great Bear Lake next year. We're going to do this for Warriors Adventure Canada. We want to raise some funds for them, and what they do is they're first responders and veterans, helping first responders and veterans with PTSD issues, and we can't fathom what a paramedic or a military man goes through in the run of a career. So I really wanted to do something to show the support for these peoples, and of course, honoring our First Nations. I'm going to be going up into Deco territory and Chicken up that way, and it's definitely showing our respects up there, right? And like I said, drop the tobacco, and I can't wait. I can't wait. I've been having several dreams about it. It's been really affecting me since I did the Mackenzie River and watched that beautiful Great Bear River flow into the Mackenzie, the crystal clear waters that were coming out. And then the people that were in Toledo were just amazingly kind. Yeah. And they showed such an interest in what we were doing. And when I told me, so I'd love to do Great Bear, they were just like, oh, wow. But a little bit of the things, like...
they just call it the Bear.
The Bear, yeah. And just that whole area is just gorgeous, right? Like, I mean, just what a place to go play.
What was it that drew you to Great Bear? Was it just paddling past the outflow of the river and just thinking about what lies beyond above that?
It's Canada's largest inland lake.
Yeah.
Because Lake Superior
totally within the borders.
Yeah, within the borders. Because Lake Superior is split with the United States. They're big brothers and big sisters south of us. And so I mean, Great Bear Lake, I think, and it's so isolated. It's just a challenge that I thought would be. I don't know. I've been trying to look in to see if anybody has circumnavigated it yet or recorded circumnavigating it. I know I talked to some people there do not recommend me going in there alone without a gun.
Yeah.
Which is understandable.
I don't think you're gonna really. Maybe
I'm not worried about it. I've
Yeah.
had people say that to me my whole life.
Yeah.
You gotta have a gun. Gotta have a gun.
Yeah.
No, you don't. It's how you present yourself in the bush. And if I present myself as a meal to a big bear, then that's just how it is.
Well, a bear spray is actually statistically, a lot of people are gonna be up in arms about this, but statistically, bear spray works better than a firearm.
Yeah.
You know, and there's all kinds of reasons about that, but it's mostly just black bears in there. You might get some, some tundra, some grizzlies, but I don't know. There are grizzlies there, but I don't know.
What I understand and what I've seen with grizzly bears anyway, the only time you really see them, along with the black bears, they're ours. Right. They're running away from you.
That's been my experience.
We had one when Greg and Steve and I, when we paddled up to Tukliuktuk.
Yeah.
And we stopped just before Good Hope, Fort Good Hope. And it was just a little triangle island. So we went in right in the middle of it. You could see 300 yards one way, 300 yards the other way, 200 yards ahead of you, and the river was behind us.
Yeah.
So we figured, let's stop here for lunch.
Yeah.
Have a little bite. So I just put the coffee on. And Greg, he was in charge of the gun, goes, Mike. And he pointed, and here's this huge grizzly bear walked it swam across the river and walked 200 yards away from us. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's a big one. And he sauntered over and he was just looking at us sideways. And I said, oh, that's not a good sign. Mm-hmm. I said, just the way he was carrying himself and looking, he was trying to make himself look at the size of me.
Right.
And I sensed that.
Just that body language.
And what do we do? Should we leave? And I said, no, we can't. If that bear barrels at us right now, he'd be on us before we even hit 3 feet of water.
Wow.
And then you're really in a position. Yeah. So I unlatched Spitz. Mm-hmm. And I said, do your thing. My dog was old at this time, so he's seen him. The bear went into the bush and then came out right directly and come right at us. Mm-hmm. Started walking toward us. And then Spitz started barking. Greg had his dog Tuck. He had him on the leash because he was still pretty young. And then right away the bear stopped. As soon as he started barking and started looking at us, and we're just like, hey, get going. And we're looking at the boys. We'll finish our cup of coffee, but I don't think we're going to make lunch here. Wasn't going to cook up potatoes and sausages right then. Yeah. So we took off down the river and did that. Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that you've been down the Mackenzie, but I think where it would be important was like around Churchill, the Seal River. People like jog outside of Churchill with like Winchester defenders and stuff like that. It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Well, the polar bear is something that does.
But that's
humans,
and that's a relatively small area, right?
Yes.
Too, So
David was telling me when he was up at the Seal River, he had shown me the pictures of the bears hanging around his camp, and he said he had 3 of them. Yeah. There's one male that was running around slapping the ground, and and I'm thinking, you crazy buck.
Yeah, I know. It's cool. It's beautiful country up there.
Well, I can imagine. I've never been up that way, but it's something like I'd like to get into because I paddled down from the Churchill and then came down through the over to Cumberland House. So I went down. What the hell's that? Sturgeon Weir. Yeah, I went down that. So I'd like to go from Cumberland House and go up through the Sturgeon Weir and then over to Baker Lake up that way. That's another trip I'd like to have.
That would be a cool trip. You're getting past the tree line there too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That'd be wild. Awesome.
Yeah, so that was really neat.
Now I want to ask you about the Mackenzie River too.
Yeah,
we went up there too, but we don't have enough time to talk.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we might have to save that for another podcast for sure. Yeah, we're definitely going to be we're definitely going to be doing more trips. Like this summer, I want to drive out to the Cape Breton. I still haven't paddled in Labrador, Newfoundland, PEI. Yeah. So I want to get those under my belt. I want to definitely have. So I've got every territory in Canada that I've paddled in. I could proudly say. Yeah. And
Labrador is pretty special, man.
That's what I heard. I've read a few books on it. But that's what I heard too.
The trout make up for it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many black flies that the trout just eat.
That's their food source, right? Yeah. So I could definitely see myself pulling something like that off.
Cool. Yeah.
And like I said, it's just I just want to get out of. And one thing about Great Bear Lake too is really out of my wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. I haven't been up that way other than the Mackenzie kind of a deal.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure what the.
We have the experience with Superior. It's quite similar to Superior in a lot of ways. Yeah, really rugged, a Canadian Shield, big cliffs, lots of bays. Yeah. You know what I mean? Clear water, huge lake trout, beautiful camping, more stunted forest. You're not going to get any of the big white pines, obviously, and stuff like that. It's more the black spruce and that.
Right.
But but and very cold water too. But yeah, if you have your experience on Superior will be very, very similar.
Be helpful for being on
as
a lake
far
like
as
that,
just safety and paddling goes.
Right.
Now, I've only snowmobiled across it,
Yeah.
but that was my take on it.
Yeah.
I've only snowmobiled across it.
yeah. That's it. Just snowmobile across the big lake.
Amazing. Yeah. So what? I mean, a lot of people have followed you. You've inspired a lot of people through your adventures, which has been awesome. Won awards. You name it. Canoe.
Yeah,
Kayak,
I ended up getting the Expedition of the Year award from Canoe and Kayak
which
in
was
2015. That was pretty special.
Very well deserved. Congratulations. Is there anything that you want to share for other people that might want to try stepping out of their comfort zones, maybe doing a big trip like yours, or maybe not something as big, but just taking the risk to kind of do the kinds of things that you've done with your life?
Absolutely. It's a matter of making that first step. And it can be a tough one. And I mean, it's getting, a lot of people are so busy nowadays, right? But if you're going to do this, jump in with both feet. Get after it. You don't got to go jump in and take a month-long trip. Hop in, start taking your first couple days. Get used to it. Build up to that. It's like anything. You got to work to it. And then once you get used to being comfortable in the bush and you start getting your experiences, then absolutely, but you're not going to regret it. You're not. And it's, like I said, I've had a lot of elderly people that I've known throughout my life, and I've asked them, what are your regrets? And it's always something they didn't do. It's not something they did. So don't be that one that wants to say, hey, man, as I think it would have been a shame if I sat at home thinking I could paddle across the country and I didn't do it. And you do want to get out of your challenge or your zone, and you do want to press your limits, because that's what makes you beautiful young men and women. And people look up to those challenges and say, wow, if he could do it, I could do it. And I'm just an average guy. Just getting out there and enjoying what we have in this nature, because there's nowhere else like it in the world. Where else can you paddle 8,000 kilometers in the world and not show your ID?
Oh, man. Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah.
You can't. Yeah. So it's just something to enjoy.
It's wild.
It's incredible. Yeah. It really is. And we're so blessed to be in a country like this. We are.
I agree. It's something that people probably take for granted sometimes, but it's
we do.
Awesome.
I mean, that's the nature of the beast of things. But hey, when people start talking like that, you can explain it to them. People's minds can change. That's for sure. People can change. I know I did, and the bush helped me immensely. Like I said, it made me a better person. And it feels good to be a good person and do things for others.
Awesome. Doing things for others. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, especially you can do, like I said, nudging those kids in the right direction. You don't got to push them. Give them a nudge and then watch how they go. And when you see them doing something, tell them how proud you are of them. It makes a huge difference in kids' lives, for sure.
Oh, it's such a good message, Mike. Thanks, man. And
listen, I really appreciate you having us here today, man.
You're a national treasure. Thanks a lot, man.
Hey, brother, right on. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, big fan of what you've been pulling off here too. Like I said, great messages getting out, right?
Thank you.
Not everybody could pull this stuff off and have the electronics and the support like that. I mean, it's impressive for me.
Well, thanks. This was actually more work than it probably looks like doing it. But you know what? At the end of the day, you don't need to ask somebody else. You don't need to put in a resume.
Right.
You don't need to go take this college course. You could just start a podcast if you save up a few bucks and you have an internet connection, or someone else that does, or use your iPhone or whatever too, right?
Yeah.
So
and like I tell people, don't think people aren't listening.
It might be hard to get the people in, but don't think people aren't listening, because it only takes like one or two people to make a difference too sometimes.
It does. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's I know, because I've had kids and I've had people come up and say, hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. I really appreciate it. Or you see a young veterans family get together through camping where they weren't getting that before, and you just feel this, wow, that's how I know it works. I know this works. So now it's convincing others, hey, you got a little bit of a problem, go for a walk in the bush, go for a little canoe. Take the problem with you. Leave it in the bush. Solve it. And we can do that.
Yes.
It's there. Yeah. It's there. I know there's a lot of problems in life that you simply just can't walk off. Yeah. But there are a lot of little ones that you can, that make the bigger problems not as big.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the bush, nature, just getting out there, doing stuff with your own two hands, smelling that fresh, crisp air, man.
Yeah.
It's definitely
I think that's
healing.
the big,
and just a lot of people have said, and now doctors are prescribing nature therapy. They're you spend this much time in the outdoors. Literally, doctors are writing scripts for this.
Yeah.
Right. And
go out, you're going to feel better. You know,
Yes.
and it's true. It's one thing in North America, we don't use the placebo at all. We don't use placebos. But over in Europe, they do. They have amazing results at about 50-50.
Right.
Where they tell a person, they know they're sick in the head, they know they think they're sick. And doctors say, yeah, we figured it out. Take these, you'll be cured. And they take them in their sugar pearls, and they literally cure themselves by mind power.
Right.
Because you do have a nocebo effect, opposite of a placebo effect. So if you think negatively, you can make yourself sick. There have been cases where people have been misdiagnosed, told them that they're passing, they got a terminal disease, and they've literally thought themselves right to death. Right. It didn't happen.
And I think, the term placebo gets loose, like it's fake or it's not, it's this or that.
It's as real as it gets.
Right. But the thing is, there's a lot of it we don't really understand, and it's really powerful, right?
We got to believe in ourselves.
Right.
The power of your mind and the belief, you can literally cure just about any ailment you have. It's a positive deal with it. And you got to have that in you. You get the right plants, you get the right people, and put it all together, and you can have yourself one heck of a good life.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a wrap, man.
Right on.